St. Grove Town Council. Can you have the roll call, please?
Tiempo.
Okay, we've got Mayor David Browning.
Here.
Vice Mayor Jim Rocket.
Here.
Councilman Tom Cotzee.
Olson.
Lawson.
He's not here.
Councilman Ronald D. Garrow.
Here.
Councilman Ryan Leanne.
Here. Okay, if you would stand for the pledge, remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Heavenly Father, again, we ask for wisdom and guidance tonight. We thank you for the opportunity to represent the town of Loch Titchy Groves. Lord, we pray for those that are suffering from the storm in the Panhandle. Give them relief from the flooding and protection of life. For those that are serving our country overseas, Lord, we ask for your watch care over them. We pray in your name. Amen. Amen. Okay, approval of the agenda. Any additions or corrections or deletions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we accept the agenda.
Okay, Jim's made a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ryan. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. All right, tonight there is no consent agenda. We have a presentation. Correct, Mark?
That's correct, sir.
Terry Ward.
I'm Terry Morton, a partner with Nolan Holden Minor, and I just like to thank you for inviting me here to go over your camper with you. And I see you've got a full agenda, so I'll just try to keep this brief and then open it up for any questions you might have. And just kind of jumping to page 1 of the report, which is in the financial section tab. And this is the actual opinion. This is what you pay us to do, is to give you an opinion on your financial statements. And it is an unqualified opinion, or what most people call a clean opinion, which is the best kind you can get. And what that means is we're just saying that your statements are fairly presented in accordance to generally accepted accounting principles. And so then if you take these statements and compare them to another municipality somewhere else, you're comparing apples to apples as far as how things are presented. And moving on, next is management discussion analysis. And this is like a 10-page summary of the rest of the report. So you can just read those 10 pages, and it's kind of written in plain English, and you can get a good understanding of what's actually going on in the statements. And just quickly jumping ahead to page 5, if you notice, if you look at that chart, you can see that in 2010 you had no business activities, and in 2011 you do, and that was because you moved your garbage and sanitation pickup into an enterprise fund, so you can more actively track your expenses and your revenues to make sure that you need more. And so that's going to affect the comparability when you look at the two numbers in the governmental funds. And then moving ahead to page 14, this is the balance sheet of your governmental funds. And kind of jumping down the bottom, you've got a little over $2 million in the general fund, of which $1 million of that's reserved for your capital projects fund that you started in 2012, and you've got $1 million of unassigned fund balance, which is a healthy reserve for where the city is right now. And then the transportation and special revenue fund is to account for your money that's restricted for transportation charges, and that's got a reserve of $600,000 that's restricted for those expenses. And then after that, the footnotes will just kind of go in more detail. And the statistical section is, eventually it's going to be 10 years, but right now it's 5 years, and you can look at the trend analysis and stuff there. And then jumping ahead to the page 52, this is our management letter. 53, we had one comment just on some record keeping and bookkeeping things that we saw some room where there could be some improvement. And just to, one section I skipped in the beginning was the introductory section, and that's just basically introduction, but one thing that is in there is the certificate of achievement. Every year your statements go up to Chicago where 3 people grade them, and then based on that review, you've always received the certificate, which is something to be proud of.
Okay.
Anyone have any questions?
Any questions? Good deal. Do we need a motion to accept or anything? Okay. Someone want to entertain a motion to accept this report?
I'll make that one.
Okay, Ryan makes a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ron. Further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Carrie, thank you very much. Okay, moving on to the ordinances. No, I'm sorry. Committee reports, the financial committee. And we have Cheryl Miller here tonight.
Which Ryan can do the next one.
Okay.
Reporting for the April financials, it was approved with no reclass required. And the closing fund balances, you have $2.25 million in your general fund. In your road fund, you have $640,000. And in your sanitation fund, $165,000. With a bank balance of $3.02 million. Through April 30th, the town received 31% of annual revenue budgeted and 22% of expense, year-to-date revenue expenses. Revenue exceeded expenses by $370,000. Wells Fargo Bank and Bank United presented their RFPs for banking services. The committee asked town staff to analyze costs that could be incurred from each proposal based on the average collected balance and advise the committee to the next meeting. The next meeting was set for last night. And there were no budget amendments.
Okay. Any questions? All right, motion to accept the committee report.
I make a motion to accept the committee report findings through April and May.
Chair makes a motion to accept April financial. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ron. Further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Cheryl, thank you very much. Moving to ordinances. Mike?
Mr. Mayor, members of the Town Council, we have before you the first 2 ordinances are related. They relate to comprehensive land use amendments relating to what is known as assignment property. The applicant is here to provide for a change in the land use map for a portion of it to revert back to your residential classification of land use, and for a portion to be, I believe, commercial low under comprehensive plan. And then the second ordinance is a proposal to change text in the comprehensive plan related solely to the portion that would be purchased by Palm Beach State College, and it relates to their project. So they are related. You might have a single presentation by staff to start, but then we can take action on each of them separately. Under the town's charter requires a vote of 4 to approve. This is transmittal. It comes back to you for approval. If you vote tonight to transmit, it goes to state agencies for review, and it comes back for final adoption after that review. I believe currently that if it moves forward this evening, would be at the end of August, give or take. So with that, what I'd like to do is turn it over to the town's planner, Fleischman, and then we have, of course, you can see a room full of applicant representatives. We'll allow everyone to provide their presentation. These are public hearings, so at some point, after Jim does his introductory, what I'd like to do is go and read the title for the first ordinance and conduct the hearing and the presentations on that, and then after that's concluded, we'll go on to the second one, and read the title then, and we'll have the presentations and whatnot on the second. Okay, so at this time, we'll turn it over to Mr. Fleischman. We're a little bit tight here, so give us a second to see the seats.
Thank you, Mayor. As Mike said, the first 2 ordinances for consideration tonight both essentially related to the same property. So I'd like to start out by just giving a brief little history of how we got where we are, and then lead into each of the ordinances separately. The subject property is 96.73 acres, and it's from the Simon property located at the northwest corner of Southern Boulevard and Bean Road. The current future land use designation on the property is multiple land use. The multiple land use category was assigned by ordinance 2011-015, which became effective last fall. And as I said, there are two proposed amendments tonight, Amendment 12-1 and 12-2, that in combination will rescind the multiple land use category on the property. Also, it will assign a commercial low future land use designation to the 21.73 acre portion of the property located directly at the intersection of Southern and thirdly, we'll incorporate a special policy within the comprehensive plan that will govern the future planning and development of the Congress State College campus. As I said, there are two proposed amendments. Amendment 12-1 is proposed to rescind the multiple land use designation on the entire 96.73 acre property and assign the commercial low designation to the 1.73 acre parcel. And the net result of that amendment will be on the 96.73 acre parcel, we will be left with 75 acres of RR5, rural residential 5. That's the portion where the proposed college campus will go, and also the 21.73 acre commercial property at the corner. Amendment 12-2 is related solely to the proposed Columbia State College campus. And that is to add a new special policy to the future land use element of the comprehensive plan, which, as I said, will govern the future planning and development of the State College campus. Just a little history. As I said, the current future land use designation is multiple land use. And in that multiple land use designation on the 96.73 acre parcel, the town has assigned 21 acres of commercial low, 21 acres of commercial low office, and 55 acres of rural residential 5. If Amendment 12-1 is adopted, the land use designations will be 22 acres plus or minus of commercial low and 75 acres of rural residential 5. Okay, in addition, the multiple land use designation currently on the property not only defined and limited the amount of acres that are to be in future land use categories, it also assigned the different intensities to each of the land use categories and types of use of the water. There is a mistake on there. The commercial intensity, 91,476 square feet, is correct. The office should be 130,000, not 182,952. And residential, 55 units. So that's what the current land use designation will allow in terms of maximum development potential on the site. if amendment 12-1 passes again, the maximum commercial intensity on the corner 21 acres will be 94,655 square feet. No office development, no residential development, with the balance being a college campus. Now, the actual intensity of the college campus has not been determined at this point, and I'll let the applicant maybe speak to that a little later in the presentation if they so desire. The reason that the intensity hasn't really been defined at this point is the scale and timing and intensity of the campus is going to be determined over a long period of time, probably several decades, and it will be based on the college's enrollment needs and availability of funding. So we can't really at this point put a specific intensity level on the college campus.
Excuse me, quick question.
Yeah.
That's 55 units at an RR5 for 55 acres? Should have been 12 units, right?
19.
Okay, 19 is what we used.
Yeah, that's what I usually.
All right.
I really messed up. 130,000 square feet of office and 19 residential units.
All right.
Okay, amendment 12-2, the second amendment is to add special policy 1.15.4 to the future land use plan of the comprehensive plan. And as I said, that will govern the future development of the Plymouth State College campus. Special policy 1.15.4 has three basic components. First is a list of land development regulations that will govern all of the development and building construction activities that will take place on the site. The second is a requirement that the college develop a master site development program to be reviewed and approved by the town, and also includes a list of contents that the master development program has to contain. The third item is a statement of how the town is to be involved in the preparation of the state mandated campus master plan and its 5-year updates. There's a policy in there to ensure that the town will participate during the preparation of the master plans and have the ability to provide input into the development. That concludes my brief history on the project, and the way I would like to proceed from this point is start out with Amendment 12-1, which is Ordinance 2012-04, and to make sure that all of the various parties and individuals have a chance to provide comments to the council tonight. I'd like to follow that before starting out with Amendment 12-1, as I previously stated, Amendment 12-1 proposes to rescind the multiple land use designation and policy 1.15.1 on 96.73 acres on property, and assign the commercial low future land use designation to the 21.73 acre portion of the property located directly at the northwest corner of Southern Boulevard and Reed Road. The proposed text and map amendments are presented on pages 8 and 9 of the staff report.
Mr. Mayor, I'll go ahead and my new ordinance title for proposed ordinance 2012-04, ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Lafayette, Grove, Florida, amending the Town of Lafayette, Grove, Florida Comprehensive Plan to 1, amend the comprehensive plan text to rescind special policy 1.15.1 and objective 1.15 of future land use element, and to amend the future land use map FLU-1.10 to rescind the multiple land use designations, specific reference to special policy 1.15.1 on the 96.73 acres located in the northwest corner of Southern Boulevard and B Road, Loxahatchee Groves, Florida, thus restoring the RR5 land use designation on the property. Amending the future land use map to assign the commercial road designation to the 21.73 acres located at the northwest corner of the Southern Boulevard and B Road, Loxahatchee Groves, Florida, as indicated on Exhibit 1 thereto. Here too, providing for amendment to the comprehensive plan that reflects such changes, providing for conflicts of ability and effective date.
All right. What's the next step?
Okay, Mayor, the local planning agency, that's the Planning and Zoning Board sitting as a local planning agency, met at its meeting on April 12th, 2012, to discuss the proposed amendment and recommend approval by a 4-1 vote. And the staff recommendation, staff finds Amendment 12-1 generally consistent with the intent and direction of the Town of Loxahatchee Groves Comprehensive Plan, and recommends approval as presented on pages 8 and 9 of the staff report.
All right.
The applicant is here, unless you've got questions for staff. We want to start with that, otherwise you can hear from the applicant.
Sounds good. Any questions for Jim? Okay. We'll turn it over to the applicant.
Good evening. For the record, Bob Benz with Design South, and I'm here today representing the Simon property. Now, a year ago next week is the day this comp plan change was adopted by the Village Town Council within Loxahatchee Groves. And here we are again, a year later, roughly modifying that change because of the college. Something that I think we all will agree is a very positive thing for the town of Loxahatchee Groves. As we load the PowerPoint in there, what I'm going to be presenting to you tonight is very similar to what you've already seen in the past. And when I'm done with the relatively short presentation, I'll turn it over to the college to talk about their specific issues relevant to the college. Because once again, I think you've already seen many of the issues that we're going to be presenting to you tonight. To begin with, as we bring this application up before you, I'm going to begin by giving you a quick little timeline, because this is, again, the transmittal hearing. I think as Jim has given you a very thorough presentation tonight, this item, you'll see it again in basically 2 months on the final adoption. Even though the Department of Community Affairs is no longer with us anymore, the Department of Economic Opportunity is there, and they still require some minimal review. So we'll go up to Tallahassee and come back to you again for final adoption during the month of August. So you will see this basically exact presentation again then. Again, just to give you kind of an overview, hopefully my little finger is going to work. And maybe not. There it goes. My goal was to be staff and sit at this table. That was really what I did. I'm going to coffee here. Anyway, just to give you a quick overview of the schedule that you have before you today. We are at the comp plan transmittal hearing, as I mentioned to you a moment ago. Just kind of give you a chronology of what's going to happen first, second, third, fourth, fifth. And not all these items are specifically related to each other. Second item is the PUD ordinance. The PUD ordinance will be before you in about 2 weeks. It's not specific to this particular property, it's specific to the overall town, but it does have issues that hopefully the commercial element, when it does come forward, will be a PUD. So we'll follow unfold this particular ordinance, which is currently being reviewed by your planning and zoning board in the town. So you should see that here in a couple of weeks. As I mentioned to you just a moment ago, in about 2 months from now, you'll actually see the same item come back before you again for adoption of the comprehensive plan amendment, which will be the final approval for the comp plan change. After that, you will see items specific only to the commercial element. The college will basically be done, to my knowledge. They may want to speak to that issue if there's any additional things they would need to do. But the rezoning approvals and the site plan approvals are really specific only to the commercial elements that you'll see before you. So I kind of tried, we also added a little bar on here again to show you which is which. The yellow, the first one is the college, which really only has the first couple of items there to deal with. The blue really is a entire process. And rezoning and site plan approval you probably won't see to the end of this year. And then again is after the PUD ordinance is adopted, the comp plan's been approved, then you'll see the site plan and zoning looking for that application. So you have a number of meetings certainly in front of you. Tonight, again, we are here for the comprehensive plan change. As Jim has already indicated to you, the item was approved as an MLU, multiple land use. We are going to basically be rescinding or removing that MLU approval from the property and replacing it with two different land uses. One is 75 acres, will go to RR5, which, as I think you all know, is the previous land use that was on the subject parcel. The other was 21.73 acre, which goes to the commercial retail use on the site, which is really what's approved today as part of the MLU. So the commercial really remains pretty much the way it is today. And the remaining property, which is the office space and the residential, goes just to all residential RR5. Again, a year ago, this is what you approved, and again, I'm going to run through it quickly because I know you probably could do this presentation as well as I can. The north portion of the property, 55 acres, is the RR5, approved for a maximum of 19 residential units on that portion of the property. The southeastern corner of the property, which is the commercial low section of the land, is 21 acres, 91,000 square feet. Again, this is the current approval that was approved a year ago. And then again, on the southwestern corner is the commercial low office, 21 acres, roughly 130,000 square feet for the overall property. Again, this is part of the MLU approval that you will be rescinding as part of the approval for this comprehensive plan changes that we're asking for on the site. Proposal, again, is the commercial low, basically the same amount of acres. The square footage has inched up a little bit from 91 to 94,000 square feet. That basically reflects the 10% building coverage that's in your comprehensive plan. And that's what your comp plan says is 10% building coverage. That's what the 94,000 square feet represents, which is why that number has changed slightly. And the remaining property, again, returned to what it was a year ago. That is our R5, and that's for the south. That's for the Palm Beach State College property. Again, the remaining 75 acres of the overall site. It will no longer be a MLU on the property over these two specific land use approvals for this particular property. Similar chart to what Tim presented to you just a moment ago. Again, today the office space is approved for 130. It's going to 0. The commercial 91, 476 is going to 94, 655. Again, reflecting that 10% building coverage for that portion of the site. Total of 221,000 square feet is what's approved under the MLU, the current approval today. What we're asking you to change it to is a reduction down to 94,000 square feet. So that is an overall reduction of 126,000 square feet of commercial space. And then, of course, we have the college. The college is a new user that's coming in. It's going to be occupying the 75-acre portion of the overall property. So that's kind of an overview of what we're asking you to do today on the particular parcel itself. Real quickly, I think we spoke to you about this once before during a workshop, but just maybe to reiterate, we have been proactive. We've been to the Florida Department of Transportation, that was a joint application by the college as well as the La Teche Groves commercial parcel for access points into the property. FDOT back in February approved 3 access points into the site. First one is right in the middle of the commercial parcel. It is a right-in and right-out access point. Second one is a shared access point, which is also right-in and right-out. That access point will be the college's primary access. It will also be a secondary access point connection on the terminus of Tangerine, which will lead you into the commercial parcel there. So both of those, the second one I just put on there, again, will serve both properties. And finally, there'll be a right-in only into the college itself. This is a copy of the letter that approved the property approved the access points on February 28th from FDOT to the request. This, of course, is Tangerine, which we've all talked about in the past, which is really becoming kind of the frontage road in the middle of the site, which I think everyone is very, very familiar with. That'll serve as the primary access point into the commercial parcel. In addition to that, you'll have a second access point off of Via Road that will provide access into the college's property off of Via Road. And again, both the commercial and the college will share Tangerine. Tangerine will be an access point You can get to the college from B as well as using the northern access point into the college itself. I'd like to talk very briefly about B Road and the improvements to B Road, because we know that's an issue for the council. Just kind of give you a quick overview of B Road. B Road, of course, the section that we're talking about runs from Okeechobee Boulevard down to Southern Boulevard. There are two primary improvements that are going to occur to this section of B Road. The first section is the area down at the south end, and that is a section that will be paved between the collecting canal and Southern Boulevard. That section will provide the access, of course, to the Solar Sports property on the east side of B Road, as well as the Simon property on the west side. Again, that will be a paved road section with, well, it's been probably 2 to 4 lanes, maybe 2 to 3 lanes, depending upon what section of roadway you are, because of the variety of turn lanes providing access on Southern Boulevard, as well as into the various portions of the property itself. North of the collecting canal, up to Okeechobee Boulevard, we have a section of roadway that's going to utilize the ozone surfacing material that we have in Loch Safety Groves. And again, that as I mentioned, is going to go from the collecting canal up to Okeechobee Boulevard. Responsibility of constructing both those sections of roadway is going to be part of a tri-party agreement between the Solar Sports property on the east side and the Simon property on the west side, which incorporates both the college as well as the Loch Safety Groves commercial property. As we mentioned previously, it is anticipated that these improvements will occur shortly after the final zoning approvals for the property, which is primarily Loch Safety Groves common center there. In addition, I would like to talk very briefly about some traffic calming items that have been discussed previously. First off, the section of roadway that we're talking about from Okeechobee down to Southern is estimated to be $1.1 million. Again, there will be no cost to the residents, taxpayers of Loch Safety Grove. That cost will be borne by the two particular properties. Again, that was committed to as part of the comprehensive plan amendment approvals from a year ago. So that remains the way it is today. One key element that's been discussed is traffic calming, and I know one of the comments that has been raised is how do we handle traffic calming along the section of roadway. And I did want to address one element that's been discussed previously, and that is at the intersection of Collecting Canal and B Road. One of the recommendation suggestions was to do a roundabout at this location. We have a number of concerns about that roundabout, and I wanted to bring it to your attention earlier than later. First off, I guess I should also reiterate that all the traffic calming along this section of roadway will have to go through the Loch Safety Water Control District Board, as well as the council, to get your both approvals on how we're going to treat the section of roadway. So you ultimately be making that decision, and that decision is not going to be made tonight. I just want to address this one particular issue of the roundabout at the Collecting Canal and Southern Boulevard. First concern is a project concern for these two particular projects, and it probably is an easy one to understand. The roundabout costs about 30% of the cost of the entire roadway section. It's a cost of about $300,000. So the overall project cost would go from $1.1 to $1.4 million. It's also important to recognize the fact that that $300,000 cost is does not include any right-of-way acquisition. Now, there would be some required right-of-way acquisition that would have to occur at that intersection, and the cost of that is anybody's guess at this point in time. This is actually a little blow-up of the proposed, or not proposed, of the possibility of a roundabout at the intersection of B Road and Collecting Canal. It's kind of hard to see. I'll overlay a little green blob on there, which will kind of show you where it actually is. It pretty much takes up that entire intersection. This is a Palm Beach County typical roundabout cross-section. We have two engineers here that can speak about it much better than I can if you have specific questions relevant to it. Concerns that we have, in addition to the obvious one, which is the cost, is the practicality of this particular item. This is really kind of an urban intersection improvement where you're really trying to address an intersection and the crossing of traffic from those two intersections. According to our traffic engineer, it's not designed to really slow down traffic. It's really intended to handle an intersection improvement instead of having a four-way stop or a two-way stop. It's intended to get rid of the stop signs at a particular intersection and allow through traffic and, of course, the yield condition that we all experience at the actual roundabout. The other big concern, or an additional large concern that we have relevant to this is how you service it from a pedestrian or an equestrian perspective. Because of the nature of a roundabout, there is no stop condition there. If you are on a horse or a bicycle or a pedestrian, again, there is no stop condition. So trying to get across that section of roadway becomes more difficult, especially, for example, if you're on a horse. It'd be very difficult to get an equestrian rider and a horse across that intersection. In addition to that, it flares out on literally all four corners of that because of the papers for the roundabout itself. I think that's a concern going north and south. It's probably even a bigger concern going east and west along Collecting Canal, which is, I think, intended to be, and is today, a major equestrian route for La Vicente Grove. So that is another concern that we have of doing a roundabout. In addition, there's a significant section of the canal would have to actually be piped to be able to accommodate that. And that, of course, equates to the part of the reason for the significant cost for it. Bottom line is that we would prefer to look at some other ways to handle traffic calming, since the roundabout really isn't a traffic calming device anyway, and it creates a series of other problems at that intersection that we think would make it a situation probably for the town. In addition to that, like I mentioned earlier, we will be happy to work with both the town, your staff, the Water Control District Board, on how to handle traffic calming along that corridor. But I did want to bring up this particular issue and kind of do a quick update relevant to the roundabout at that intersection. That pretty much concludes our presentation. At this point, unless you have any questions for me, I'll turn it over to the college to discuss their particular questions or comments or issues they may have relevant to the request.
Okay, Councilman, questions?
A couple questions. You bring up the roundabout to start there, but you don't talk about any alternatives?
I think we talked about speed tables actually along B Road, we've actually had a meeting with both the Water Control District Board as well as the town staff. We've been working with them on trying to come up with a proposed solution. What would you like to see? We're open to a number of suggestions or solutions. I think the general direction is either the speed tables, speed humps along B Road. I think we're looking at your direction. Tell us what you would like us to do. We think the primary option is a series of four-way intersection, maybe a four-way stop sign at this intersection. In addition to that, possibly a speed table or speed humps along the B Road section. And again, tell us what you would like to do, and we'll go forward and move in that direction. We just think that the roundabout concept will create more problems than it's going to solve. All the other options we think are good options for B Road.
Okay, well, first of all, speed calming devices along that section of B Road up to Okeechobee, if you're only considering a roundabout as the only speed calming device, that's not sufficient. So if we had eventually ended up with a roundabout, you'd need something else with it anyway. But I'm certainly open to what better minds and I on road development as to what might work along that way, and certainly working with the town. The second question was, with the original zoning and the plans on the property, what were the entry points that we had? What were the access points to that property? We now have 5.
In the original comp plan approval for the property, we never went to FDOT to get any approvals for the access points into that site. That's normally not something you would typically do after your comp plan amendment is approved. So there really wasn't any specific approvals from FDOT for access into the property. What we did show, we had a master plan, and what the master plan showed is frankly probably not too different than what we have. Let's go back a little bit here. Here we go. We had access point into the commercial off of, as we're showing here. We had a joint access point that, remember, this portion of the property here was an office complex. And there was a joint access point here that went into the office space as well as went into the retail property. There was not I don't believe, a secondary or third access point off of Southern Boulevard. I believe it was just these 2 access points in the original approval. Off of B Road, similar. I mean, you had the access point lined up with Tangerine, which has always been the proposal on this particular property. The second access point to the north really just serve the residential component, which was those 19 residential units. That was it. It was a dead-end cul-de-sac. So similar to what you have on this plan, just different uses.
It doesn't sound that similar to me. If we had basically one access mile southern of Main Street.
No, there were two.
Two.
Yeah, there was the one
And
into
off
the
of
commercial.
Off of B, we had two access points?
Yeah, two off of B. One into the residential and one into the commercial,
Okay,
where Tangerine is.
I understand.
Okay, any other questions? My thought, originally, and I think from day one, we talked about Ocean B Road and speed humps, like the water control district has done with the other roads. I think that was kind of an understanding we had to start. My thought was we were going to put the roundabout down either where Tangerine was or where another, at the other point. And my thought was only to break up the line of sight, not so much to make a break for horses or anything like that, but so somebody's not driving on there and it's a straight shot to southern and, it's kind of hammered down because that's going to be paved differently. So that was kind of my thought. But anyway, all right, any other questions? Ron?
The way I understand you, whatever we want, we can get. We definitely have to have the speed humps, no doubt about it, unless you're willing to put guardrails in along the canal. That's very expensive. What I'd like to see with the speed humps, we've had some complications with the speed humps not being very precise. Now, I know for a fact that we ought to be able to come up with what I call a speed table, just like they got out in Anchorage. I hear it's hard on those, but I definitely want the speed humps rated at 30 miles an hour, going over the speed humps. And the way we've got them engineered now, it allows you to get up to possibly 30 miles an hour between speed humps. So we've got to have the speed humps every 500 feet apart. I believe that's what the engineers require. I'm glad you brought up about the equestrians and the bicycles, and I favor roundabouts because I like roundabouts, but if it's going to cause a complication for people walking, hiking, bicyclists, equestrians and stuff like that, we've got to have the safest thing for everybody. So if that means 2 new bridges, and I believe Cleet has already got a game plan for new culverts or the bridges or whatever we want to come up with. I know y'all have estimated so much right now, like 1.4 million. You kind of set aside for the project. Okay, the one thing that I haven't brought up that I thought about recently is if that cost is below that 1.4 mil, I personally would like to see it put towards what I call North B Road. We've got people right now that are petitioning to pave North B Road. We've never talked about North B Road being a major problem, but the truth of the matter is when people come from the Anchorage, they're going to cut across our North Road, north end of Loxahatchee, and they're going to shoot south on B Road, from North Road all the way to the college. I don't know why they think of that before now, but one reason why a lot of people weren't looking to pave the road. So I would hope that if you set aside a certain amount for that cost, and if we do South B Road all the way to Southern, and that cost is below, I would like to see you put that extra money towards North B Road as far as cutting the cost down towards the residents on the bigger road. That's my main concern. You did talk about a roundabout on the south end around Tangerine. I personally like the roundabout there because, like the mayor, I believe the mayor said, it will slow them down just before they get to Southern. We have people that like to race from one point to another point, especially trying to get to a red light as quick as they can in the major highway. So that would slow them down just a little bit before they got to Southern Boulevard. And that's my main concern. The one thing I like is as soon as the zoning is approved, then we can start on these road projects. I didn't like it if we had to wait until the project was done. So everything looks good to me.
Let me just clarify a couple of quick items. The project obviously has evolved in the last year with the addition of the college. One of the original concept plans was to have a roundabout at Tangerine on B Road. And that was based on the assumption that there would be much traffic north of town. Today, we of course have the college just to the north of that, and certainly one of the major access points the college is going to have is going to be off the B Road. Let's go back to the good old DOT map here. There we go. So the secondary access point, located right here, is going to be a major entryway into the college. For example, if you are looking to go eastbound on Southern Boulevard, you'll note there's no median breaks along Southern Boulevard. So the traffic that's going to need to be going to the east is going to have to exit out onto B Road, either at Tangerine or at the college's access point. Come down Southern Boulevard, and that's your direct way you turn to the east. If you're coming from the west going to the east, same thing. You would turn into B Road, come up and enter either along Tangerine through the retail shopping center project, or directly into the college itself. One of the concerns that we have today about doing a roundabout at this location is that we are creating an additional intersection just before the college's location. I mean, originally there was only going to be 19 residential units at this location. Today we have, of course, the college there, and it probably would, be a burden on, I would think, the college and people going in and out of the college to have a roundabout immediately after you were to enter on the B Road. So we're no longer recommending that roundabout at this location because of that. I think it would be not be conflict there. I'm not even sure if it's even practical, to tell you the truth, and I'm not the expert to tell you whether it is or not, but I think from a common sense perspective, having everybody go around that roundabout going to the college, especially as classes are about to begin, could be a challenge. So we would not recommend having a roundabout really at this section, or actually anywhere along that section of the roadway through there. As far as the actual traffic calming devices go, I think we're very, very flexible. Speed tables, speed humps. We understand there's been some problems along the open sections of the road where they put in some speed humps and the materials they utilize to construct them. I think that probably is a separate discussion that we need to resolve and bring back to you. Combination of ourselves, your staff, your engineers, as well as the Water Control District Board, and bring that to you as a final proposal. And that yet hasn't been finalized, but certainly hopefully we'll be able to do that in the next month or so before we come in for final adoption. Last comment I just wanted to raise is that our estimated cost for this section of the roadway today, as we proposed, is $1.1 million. Just to clarify that. So, if you have any additional questions, we're happy to answer. And if not, I'll turn it over to the college.
Okay. Got one public comment, Mike?
Can I suggest let's hear from it all and then open up all public at the end?
Sure. You want to do it all at the end?
Yeah, I think that's the best way to do it. Because we haven't heard from the applicant yet. Let's hear from the applicant and we can go back. No, we did. I'm sorry. Are they done? I apologize.
Well, there's two parts to the presentation. I mean, there's our presentation and up to the college.
College is the next one.
Oh, the college is the next
So
one.
you want to go ahead and finalize then? No comments this section?
I think the way Mike and Jim structured the meeting is they're doing one item at a time.
Okay.
Yeah,
I remember
okay.
from
My
the-
apologies. I thought there was the college could speak on this application.
All right. I've got, what is it, Diaz Gonzalez?
Thais.
What is it?
Thais.
Hayes. Okay. Hello. State your name and your address.
Thais Gonzalez, 13090 Raymond Drive. I wanted to make a comment about the roundabout, and I think that some people, the question were not going to be happy with what I'm about to say. But I do believe that putting a roundabout right there is a good thing. Because I have the perfect example, the corner of Pearson and Wellington, and 125th, right before you get to the International Polo Ground. There's a roundabout right there. That's a very pedestrian area, and it's right at the entrance of a park. I think it's better to have the traffic, keep on flowing. And part of what English is not my first language, but if you don't understand what I'm saying, just stop me. But I think it's better to have a fluid transit or traffic, keep the cars on going, instead of having, stuck traffic, cars in idle, especially when kids are trying to get on time to school. So I do believe that a roundabout would be a good option. I think you're great. You're very smart because you're touching the soft spot and you're trying to save money. I understand that. But I would definitely consider the idea of having the roundabout. I think it would be good.
Okay. In what order they had Dina? And then I've got Virginia and
Lee Road, provided you with something that's going to come up at the next item as well. It is the Wellington Heights Master Plan from 2008. I find it interesting when they're giving you traffic numbers. And these traffic numbers, by the way I understand them, are based on the commercial and possibly 15 homes. They are not really giving you an idea of what the traffic will look like once you place this college there. In this particular map that I gave you, they have 1,600 parking spaces, just to start, and that's not finished. So as we're looking at this traffic now, roundabouts are great tools when you have direction traffic flowing in two directions, which is not the case here. We're going to have one direction. You're having people come out of this area and they're going to want to go east. And they can't because there's going to be difficulty getting out this traffic light and having enough lanes. It's going to push it through collectively. You are going to have people that are going to push out and will want to go west. And they're not going to go up to Seminole Pratt. And they're not going to push to Royal Palm Beach. And you're not considering, before when we had commercial there, we had traffic that was probably coming more so from Southern Boulevard, the arterial road, handle that kind of traffic. Now we're looking at traffic that's coming quite a bit from the acreage. Very little traffic from us, because we're probably the last people that need this college out of the western communities. And yet, you have not looked at all at what this is going to do to our roads overall. You've concentrated on this one little sector, and you've not asked for the numbers. We have numerous people sitting on this council. You know, look at the information that was given to Wellington. You know, all this talk about we don't know what we're doing in 50 years. In 50 years, we're going to be dead anyhow, that I got to hear prior. I'm sorry, I mean, Wellington's 30 years old. Another 20 years, I guess it should fold up. I mean, we have to plan properly. We have to look at the whole picture. We have to ask for all the information. And then we have to figure out, how does that truly fit within our plan? I hear it's compatible, but frankly, this is an urban college. There are very, very few colleges that are in rural areas. And when they are, such as Worcester, Ohio, possibly, I mean, it's almost taking a leap, Delaware, Ohio. You know, I'm sure you're familiar with those, the Worcester bubble. Those places have campuses. They have places for the students to live. They're not running back and forth to get to class 2 to 3 times a day. They're not looking to take AP classes at a college where they're in high school. It's not creating any of this traffic. And we are not considering what this will do to our town. Now, if we want to go and create this, you know, commercial sector on Southern Boulevard and have this vision of more of an urban place and have this traffic through and have, I don't know, a road going west that's going to be commercial as well, and you know, start having dwellings for students, and that's the future of our town, then you know, you ought to go ahead, because that's exactly where we're at.
You recommend a camp or dorm reserves?
Yeah, well,
okay, let's keep it 3 minutes.
This is where we're going with this. And, you know, right now, you're pushing this traffic in the wrong direction as it is. You're not asking all the right questions. And you deserve to know these questions.
All right, Virginia. And then I've got Ann Parker.
Virginia Standish from 5410 Northford. My comments are concerning what the gentleman who's presenting touched on a few points, and it may apply to what comes next. Basically, my concerns are we are focusing on this commercial development. It seems to have become the priority for this project, and the college almost appears to be an afterthought. I'm not saying on the part of the town council, I'm saying on the part of perhaps the owners and the developers. That is sending off bells in my head. I have some serious concerns why this commercial property is the big deal on this corner, and actually what will happen with what is supposed to be the college. I would ask you to pay close attention to the presentations and what will or will not happen. The college, as I said, is presented as an afterthought. There's obviously discussion of traffic studies that are questionable. There exists a Wellington master plan drafted in 2008. Again, the information on the college has been minimal. That is very disturbing, to say the least, to town residents, myself included. The auto demand on the roads is going to be excessive. I know we are asking them perhaps to put in up to North B Road one time. What are we going to be asking them to maintain, especially on B Road, for the future, as if this campus grows and the cars are coming through our neighborhood and we are no longer agricultural, we could become urban or city, you know. The maintenance of that road should continue. It should not be a one-time deal. Also, the gentleman mentioned, and I believe Mr. Fleischman perhaps referred to PUDs that were approved at the April meeting. I attended a portion of that meeting, and I stated a concern there, and I'll state it to you now. Please do not repeat the mistakes of the past in this community before it was a town with PUDs, where we now have mini subdivisions throughout Waxahachie roads. I'm very concerned when you say a PUD layer to the town. My understanding was, if anything, PUDs would be applied to the commercial areas. So residents are very concerned, those of us who want to stay residential agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you, Virginia. And Ann?
And Parker being collected down the road. The traffic circle really scares me there. You're talking land acquisition, and I want a good price for mine. So everybody knows I want a good price for it. And also the Westbrooks, they want a darn good price for theirs too. But yeah, it just, every time I have to go to Royal Palm, I go to that little bitty roundabout with the big trailers that we have. We have a lot of big horse farms on South B. And that's a pain in the butt. Excuse me. Yeah, so that's my main concern, and there's a few other main concerns about the whole thing. I just have to see the rest of it to comment on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. All right, Mike, next step, motion.
The next step is a motion to, the motion under consideration is to adopt the ordinance which would authorize transmittal of this proposed amendment to the Department of Economic Opportunity.
Okay. All right, I'll entertain the motion.
I'll make such motion.
All right, second.
I'll second.
Second by Ron. Further discussion.
I think that, moving forward, we all realize probably the biggest concern we have as a town is through traffic that we're going to have. We do need to come up with a way to address it. As far as I'm concerned, I would try to do everything that I can to try to focus the traffic onto Southern, and try to keep it out of our local roads as much as possible. I do understand that a lot of folks make acreage, they're going to go through the back way, as we say, or just that Sunsport spot, and go through D, go for all of that road. So you have to try to make it more attractive for them to use Southern Road. So we do definitely have to figure that out, but not now.
All right. Ron? All right. Okay, we've got my standing on this is we're basically putting it back to what it was. Now, if we had never become a town, this would have been, it would have been, if the college would have built there on an R5, they're allowed to do that. They would have built there. So we would not have got the Ochimar Road, we would not have gotten some of the other things that we're getting at. The county would have allowed it. So, but anyway, I think we can work together on this. Honestly, my concerns are not so much B Road, because I think with the speed humps and even the ones, there was a learning curve when the Water Control Board did it. My road, D Road, you can take them at 30 miles an hour. A little bit rough, but you can take them at 30 miles an hour. But it does slow down the traffic considerably. I'm afraid that when we put them on B Road, there'll be a lot of this, of people that will be discouraged to go down B Road, and my fear is they're going to go down A Road and cut down Button. So we're going to have to do everything we can to discourage that. But anyway, all right, we have a motion and a second to transfer this. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right. Moving to the second amendment.
Mr. Mayor, the second is ordinance, proposed ordinance 2012-05, and we read the title. The ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Leicester, Grove, Florida, amending the Town of Leicester, Grove, Florida Comprehensive Plan 1, amending the Comprehensive Plan text to create special policy 1.15.4 under objective 1.15 of future land use element, which regulates development on the 74.99 acre property generally located in the northwest corner of Southern Boulevard, Leicester, Grove, Florida, as specifically indicated on Exhibit 1, known as the Palm Beach State College parcel. And 2, amend the future land use map FLU-1.10 to incorporate a specific reference to special policy 1.15.4. Providing for amendment to the comprehensive plan to reflect such changes, providing for conflict, severability, and effective date.
All right. Entertain a motion for this ordinance 2012-05.
This is also a public hearing, so we need to we'll go through the same process we did the last one.
Okay. So we'll take the motion first, and we're going to let...
I think in the last one you made the motion at the end.
Oh, okay.
I just read the title, we'll go through it, and then you'll make the motion at the end.
Good. All right. Jim.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. As I stated earlier, Amendment 12-2 proposes the addition of Special Policy 1.15.4 to the text of future land use plan, which will govern the future planning and development of the Palm State College 75-acre portion of the same property. The proposed language of Special Policy 1.15.4 is included on pages 9 and 10 of the staff report that was included in the agenda. The local planning agency at its meeting on April 12, 2010 recommended approval of the proposed amendment by a 4-to-1 vote with some wording changes to 2 provisions of Special Policy 1.15.4. Now, 1.15.4 has gone through several iterations, which I can summarize if you like here. Most of the, if you want to refer to page 9 instead, or just most of the discussion has been on policy 1.15.4-B. That and another policy, which I can the policy 1.15.4-BG at the bottom of the page. That was initially worded design guidelines. Policy 1.15.4-B is a list of the items that are going to need to be included in the state college's master site development plan, which is going to be brought back to the town for approval. The original language as proposed by the state college, and at the bottom, just stated design guidelines. At the Planning and Zoning Board meeting, the LPA, they recommended that item G be amended to read as follows. design guidelines to meet the intentions of the town's rural vista guidelines. In response to that, the State College came back with its own proposal, which it feels meets the intentions of the town and also meets the needs of the college. And the current wording states, design guidelines to be consistent with the intentions of the town's rural vista guidelines as can be applied to a college campus. And staff feels that recommended wording meets the intent of what the planning and zoning board recommended, and also provides specific direction to the college on how the guidelines will be applied to the college development. So we're recommending that language be included as item G under special policy 1.15.4-B. The other item that the planning and zoning board recommended was that policy 1.15.4-C be amended to add a sentence at the end of the policy, which is worded as follows. The college shall allow the town to participate and have input in the preparation of each of the 5-year updates to the campus master plan prior to the submission to the Department of Education. Again, the State College came back with a suggested revision to that order, which reads as follows. The 5-year updates to the campus master plan shall be submitted to the town of Waxahachie Groves for informational purposes prior to the submission of the plan to the Department of Education. During the development of the educational plan survey and the campus master plan, the town shall be given the opportunity to raise any issues or concerns with the plan for consideration by the college. And again, it's the staff's opinion that that language meets the intent of the recommendation of the planning and zoning board, and also provides a little more specific direction to the college on how and when the town will have an opportunity to participate in the master planning process. So, on that basis, staff recommendation is that staff finds Amendment 12-2 generally consistent with the intent and direction of the comprehensive plan and recommends approval as it is presented on pages 9 to 11 of the staff report.
Okay. All right, we have someone making a presentation.
Can I ask a question, Jim, first before we go? I heard a recommendation from the planning board of having input from them. I heard a response to that recommendation, an alternative wording that sounded like there's even less input from the town. Opportunity review, those types of things don't sound like you're an equal partner at the table. It sounds more like you are looking at something. If you don't like it, you raise a concern, but that's the end of it if nobody else at the table wants to take that further. You have very little to say. I'd just like to know if that's what, in layman's terms, we're talking about. So at what point does the council give up its right to alter what goes on that property?
Well, one of the provisions of the special policy is that the college develop a master development plan that is going to bring back to the town for approval. And the way the way staff is looking at it at this point, that will be approved by resolution after appropriate hearings and input from P&Z and residents at council meeting. The list of items that are to be included in that master development program are included in policy 1.15.4-B of special policy. And those items constitute the bulk of the areas that the town has the ability to comment on at that time. And each 5 years, the State College has to prepare an initial master plan, and then each 5 years they have to update the plan. The special policy, as it is written, and in my opinion, as it was proposed by planning and zoning, gives the town an official status in being able to comment and make recommendations in that master planning process. Neither one of the policies gives the council any authority to require any condition in the master plan. What has to be in the master plan is pretty much set by the state. And the master plan is principally oriented to looking at what improvements the college is looking at during each successive five-year period. They do survey and they come up with their projections. The town has the ability and will be continued in that process of evaluating the survey and commenting on any improvements that the college will be making during the ensuing 5-year period. It doesn't give the town the ability to say you shall do A, B, and C.
That's the question I'm asking. I hear comments, I hear input. It's like the fellow standing on the sidelines, raising his hand. Somebody might listen to him, somebody may not. But they have no say. And I'm interested in when we give up our say and we become a stepchild relationship where we say what we like, we have the opportunity, but what we say does not carry any weight by itself. I'm just looking for the information. It's not a criticism of anybody or anything. Just to be clear on that. When somebody says have input, that means very little to me as far as that you can make a difference.
Okay, I think the principal opportunity for the town to make to have some serious input is in this master plan. That is the first step.
I don't like the term input. I'd like to be a little more specific. Well, does it have the town have? I hear section 15.4B. I read the list. We have many items listed there. But if that's the opportunity at that time, if we say no, then we are at a no on any item. Is that relatively accurate restatement of that?
Yes.
Yes, okay. After that point, after that point, we have the 5-year plan update. And as I understand it, we can comment, but we don't have a yes or no position. That's relatively accurate.
Yeah, that's correct.
I like to put things in that term so I know when we've given up our no's and yeses and we move to a consultant role, because it's our town. I don't have a problem with when that happens. I just want to know when and make sure that we have exercised all our no's and yeses when we have them.
At the right time.
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'm, for the record, Bill Perry with the Gunster Law Firm. I'm going to make a brief presentation on just procedure and a couple issues we wanted to get on the table, and I think will help illuminate the point Commissioner Rockland was just making. First point to make about what we're here this evening for is we're at the transmittal stage of the comprehensive plan amendment, why we're here tonight. And I put actually the statute up on the board with a little yellow highlighting. In order to change your comprehensive plan, your future land use plan for the town, you need to, it's procedural. You have a couple steps you need to take. The first step is transmittal. By transmitting, what you're doing is opening up a comment and review period, consistent with what Commissioner Rockett was talking about on the later facilities plans the college will have to do, where other governmental agencies get a right to give you their review and comments. It is not a final action this evening. You get another bite at the apple at the adoption hearing, and you will have the benefit of comments of those reviewing agencies to make your final decision. So I wanted to point that out to you. The previous ordinance which you adopted is necessary for us to continue with the college on this site and in your town. It is the only land use category we defined that was compatible with having a school in your town. So we appreciate you moving that ball along. The policies and procedures that have been adopted here is there really isn't anything in your land use plan that speaks adequately to having a university. So the policies and procedures that have been proposed and worked on with staff are an attempt to address at a high level, 50,000-foot policy standpoint, what the college will do in proposing design guidelines and how that might look. But it's consistent with the rest of your comprehensive plan. It is not the implementing regulations. It is not a master plan that you're approving in any way, shape, or form. There will be at least 2 other public hearings where you get an opportunity to see master plan, to see what the college would look like, to deal with some of the issues you were discussing before, which probably aren't relevant to a comprehensive plan amendment, but they are very relevant when you get to your final decision, as you were saying, to approving a specific master plan for this site. That's scheduled, I believe, on July 12th, at that hearing. And then with the benefit of that master plan in front of you, design guidelines that are going to show you what the college is hopefully going to look like, then you'll be, and the comments you're going to get from these state agencies after you transmit, you're going to have an opportunity to review that all on August 21st when we come back for an adoption hearing on the comprehensive plan. So I think procedurally understanding that, what we're here tonight is really move the ball down the court a little bit. We're not here to ask you for a final say on this particular language. We have a presentation we're happy to make tonight. We're also happy to defer at your leisure to the final adoption hearing, since this is not a final hearing. Dr. Gallion is happy to speak to you about what it's like will be like to have a college in your town. And we have some technical advice that we can give you, or we're happy to stand and wait till the adoption hearing to make those presentations at your leisure. Thank you.
What's your feeling?
I like to hear him speak. I like to hear it as often as I can to make sure I don't miss it.
Then if I could I bring Dr. Gallion up, who has a brief presentation about the college.
By the way, thank you all for coming tonight and spending the time with us. I appreciate that.
Very good. It's our pleasure. Good afternoon, good evening. It is indeed a pleasure for me to have the opportunity to be here to share with you information about Palm Beach State College. So good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and other members of the council. I'm delighted to be able to represent the trustees, the faculty, staff, and students at Palm Beach State College because we're all interested in making it possible for the residents of this community to have easy access to the courses and programs that we have to offer. I know that we have been talking a lot of late about all of the things that take place when an activity like this is in process. A lot of developmental terms, like zoning, RR5, mixed land use, and all of those things. But I just wanted to have you see this picture so that you will be able to see what I see this activity is all about. And I know that there are some concerns. I'm not saying that you not be concerned about those things, but I would like for us to keep our eyes on the prize. And that is to be sure that the residents of this community will not have to travel through southern and to all over to different areas to get to the 3-4 campuses that we currently have for the residents of Palm Beach County. I want to share with you a little bit of history about the institution. And I want you to know that I've been in this community now since 1997. And I am so excited and so impressed with the leadership of this community and its commitment to providing educational opportunities. You know, if you look at this history up there, you'll see that the college started in 1933, but I'll have just give you just a snippet of a little bit of what was happening back during that time. In the early 1930s, you had the principal at Palm Beach High School, graduating students every year. And he noticed that there were students who were graduating and then coming back to the college, back to the high school, Palm Beach High School, to sit in the library and to gather and continue to study. And they were doing that because this was the middle of the Depression. They could not find jobs. Parents could not send them to off to get a college. And at that time, there was only two institutions of higher education, two public institutions of higher education in this state. Florida State University and the University of Florida. And so this principal then went to the superintendent, and Mr. Youngblood, and said, look, you know, we've got to do something here. Because this community is not making preparation for the future. If education is going to be that determining factor, we need to make it possible. And so as a result of that, that was the origins of Palm Beach State College. Started in 1933, and some 2 years later, we had our first graduating class of 3 students. You leap forward to today, you're talking about us serving 52,000 students and had a graduating class last year of over 4,000. So that is where we are for today. And you see that in essence what happened was Palm Beach State started out as really grades 13 and 14, you know, for high school opportunity, you know, for this community. And so we're providing educational opportunity. That was the goal then, and that continues to be the goal today for Palm Beach State College to make it possible. If you were to look at the slide that you have here, you'd see that you have some information about the 4 locations that we have. Hopefully you can see some of the footage, the number of acres that you have on each of the campuses, and you have land diagrams of the Lake Worth campus, the Palm Beach Gardens campus, the Boca campus, and the Belgrade campus. And I'd just like for you to know that this college grew up along with Palm Beach County. Just as Palm Beach County grew up from south to north, so did the location, the establishment of the different campuses. And you may wonder, you know, why did the leaders of this institution decide to put all of the campuses on I-95. And that was where the growth was. And you also have a campus in Belgrade. And so you can see what the goal was there, to facilitate educational opportunities and to be sure that individuals will have easy access to the courses and programs that we have. We now have grown an extended curriculum. We have the associate in arts degree, we have the associate in applied science and associate in science degrees, all 2-year degrees, and we're now offering the baccalaureate degrees, as you know, and many certificates and degree and diplomas for the residents of this community. And so as a result of that, you'll find on each one of these campuses a curriculum that addresses the post-secondary needs and desires of this community. all of the location, you would have an associate's in arts degree. That is our mission. It has and always will be our core mission, where we serve the first 2 years of the baccalaureate degree, and individuals then go off to the university. And then we have the 2 other workforce program degrees, and then we have certificate, and now we have the baccalaureate degree. But the core mission of this institution is the associate's in arts degree. So all residents can have access to that degree. And then we tie in those workforce degrees. It's centered around a couple of things. One, just availability. For example, you have nursing that is located, established on the Lake Worth campus. You have biotech on the Gardens campus. But those programs are oftentimes driven by the economic development needs in that community. And so I'm hoping that before long, we would be having a meeting in this community that would help us determine what other programs of study we would house on this location other than the associate's in arts degree. And that is where we want to go. You have here the Lake Worth campus, as it was in 1954. As you can see, the college had been established and located in a couple of other locations, in rented facilities and where we can borrow, to try to find a place to house our program. But in 1954, the county did a remarkable thing. It donated 154 acres of land, to the college so that we'd be able to establish a permanent location. I would imagine that if you look at this land, it looks barren. It doesn't have a lot of trees and other things. But I would imagine that the administration of this institution was very thankful of that gift, and we have done all that we can to be sure that we cause that location to be as eco-friendly and as possible. And you see on this slide, you have what that campus looks like in 2011. You can see that a lot of building has taken place, but you can see that we've been very sensitive to the environment. You'd also see that we have been very accommodating, to the environment with the kinds of building that we have built. If you were to drive down Congress or Lake Worth or 6th Avenue today, you may not be able to see from the outside what significant changes have taken place on that campus, where we've gone through that old facility, drop ceiling, pull fiber, and all the kind of things that accommodate the new way that education is taking place today. You can walk through the campus, as you can, hopefully you can see in that middle picture there, where fountains have been built. You also have on the bottom slide there, that water that you saw when the property was donated to us still there, and you can see how lush it is, today. And now you have the Palmer's Garden campus. I want to just show two contrasts of where, we have 4 permanent campuses now, but we have a campus that I think all of us will agree that is the epitome of having a college campus with the ambience that will address education needs, but also the environment as well. And that is what that property looked like in 1968. If you note, it looks very much like the Simon property, that we are interested in locating. And as a result of that, you'd be able to see how we, in contrast to our neighbors, how we have protected the environment. That is PGA Boulevard, running from top to bottom, and you look at the right side of that dark line that goes through there. Look at the development there as compared to the property with the red circle around it where the campus is located. You see what a contrast and sensitivity to the environment. Keep in mind that back when this campus was initiated, it was in the unincorporated area of Palm Beach County. There was no requirements by the county about a master plan. There was no requirement, for zoning. But I think if anyone who were to go on that campus today would see that all of the kind of things that you would imagine is what you'd like to have, you would find that on that campus. And it happened not because we had a hammer on it. It happened because we are sensitive to the environment and want to be sure that the environment is protected and we live with the environment. And I think that that is what you see. The next slide here, you easily see the contrast of that campus, where between 1977 and 1997. You see that the campus was, all of the trees and vegetation, that you see on the PGA corridor. That campus is very much hidden to the environment, and I think it's conducive to making the residents of that community very happy with us and where we are. This is another shot of the campus in 2011. I mean, look at the vegetation, look at how our property compares to the development we have with the other parts of the campus, of the community. This is a shot of just some of the life of the Gardens campus. I'm just amazed that when you go on that campus, you have to find students sitting in all kinds of different locations. They are, some of them in mass and large groups. The college campus now is very typical of what a college life is like when you're an Ivy college. Only difference is it's not a residential institution, you're a commuter institution. But we believe, research tells us that engagement is very key to a student's success. So not only do we want students talking to each other in the classroom, we also want to create that environment outside of the classroom so that learning opportunity will continue. So education is not only about learning, reading, writing, and mathematics. It is also about learning different cultures of individuals. And not only learning about that culture, but developing appreciation for that culture. And so as a result of creating that environment, we make it happen. So this is where we are. This is where we are today, with talking about some of the benefits of Palm Beach State to this community. We believe that we would do a great job at promoting economic development for the community. We do that through the construction of a facility to having programs that will address the economic development needs of this community. And as a result of that, we consider that to be a strong benefit. We also have a long-term commitment for us. I know that some may not think it's prudent to talk about long-term, but we would be here for the long term, and the kind of structure that we would have from day one will be the kind of structure that I think we would be happy to have. Provide local job opportunities, and I've already mentioned, from the construction of the property, to the time that programs are developed as well. Partnering opportunities are a miss for those communities where we have a campus. Just to give you an example, you have the Small Business Development Center. We are so fortunate that 4 years ago, we were able to lure the franchise for small business development to Palm Beach State from FAU. The SBDC has been remarkable in providing counseling for individuals who want to go into business, not only taking them from just an idea that I want to go into business, to developing a business plan, developing a marketing plan, giving those individuals the kind of opportunities and wherewithal, the knowledge to go into a business and do it successfully. Because oftentimes when individuals start out in that business, they have the expertise but don't know how to run it. And that center has been so successful. Just last year, we helped some 57 companies get started. And I think our prize occurred about 5 years ago, where we consulted a gentleman with business in Wellington and for a government contract, and he was able to get $5.6 billion. And that was what he was able to coup as a result of going through the Small Business Development Center at the college. Another example of benefits would be the Sugar Institute. We developed that program in Belgrade because of the sugar industry that you have there. You have biotech for the northern scripts in the northern part of the county. And you have the professional training opportunities pipeline that would be available as a result of the institution locating as well. So all in all, you can see some of the benefits. I think one way in which you can summarize it is that we could very well be an engine for opportunity for education, opportunity for employment, and opportunity for helping with economic development. And so again, in closing, I'd just like to share with you that you can see that this institution has a fascinating and incredible history. We've grown up along with this county. We want to be sure that education is accessible. The access is not as great as it was back in 1933, where access was about not commuting or going to Gainesville and Tallahassee to get your education. Here today, 2012, we talk about not having to drive to Lake Worth, or not having to drive to Palm Beach Gardens or to Boca to go to the campuses. And so the college has a keen interest in being in that, continuing that legacy of providing access. And we want to be in this community. And so I hope that your decision in the short term will be that you would like for us to be here. Not just a neighbor, but a vital part of this community where we work together to be sure that the residents of this community and this county will have access to educational opportunity. This part of the type of the presentation is in 2 parts. And so I'd like to call in Colleen Walter at this point to give part 2 of the presentation about the college. And I'll be available for any questions that you may ask. Colleen, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr.
Good evening, Mayor Browning, council members. I just want to summarize the technical side of the presentation. I believe Dr. Gallen gave you a very good overview of what the Collins mission is, as well as what its development philosophy is. And by using Palm Beach Gardens campus as probably a very apples-to-apples comparison with the site here, you can see how the college has been very careful in their planning and their thoughtfulness in working around the existing vegetation, working with the surrounding communities and developing a campus that serves their needs, serves the needs of the residents of Palm Beach County as far as providing education and furthering their mission, but also being very sensitive to the environment. What we have in this case is we are before you asking for special policies that would be adopted into your comprehensive plan, because the town's code does not specifically address colleges and universities. But there are very many state regulations that the university and colleges have to meet. And so it makes sense to allow those to essentially govern property development regulation. But at the 2 workshops that we had previously with the town council and with the public, we very much, and the college very much understands the town's desire that the development of this site be compatible with the community, that the look of it be consistent, that be in keeping with the character of this community, and the college recognizes that, and that is something that will be addressed as part of the design guidelines. And so what I'd like to do is maybe more specifically address Councilman Rocket's questions, because we have 2 special policies that are very similar in names, but very different in intent. So the first special policy is pretty straightforward, and that just states that the state requirements for educational facilities primarily will be the governance as far as the parking requirements, the square footages that are required for each of the different buildings, the fire access requirements, things like that. That will be governed primarily by the state requirements, as well as drainage locally by the Water Control District and the South Florida Water Management District. Where we have the two policies that I think are most important to the town, this one primarily. What this speaks to is that the college is to develop a master site development plan. And this plan is going to be the guidelines and the framework within which they are going to develop. And this is a plan that you as the town council will be approving. You'll be approving it by resolution. At this point in time, the college cannot specifically tell you where each individual building is going to be, where all of the parking is going to be. That really is going to be a function of their programming when they decide what other programs, in addition to the Associates of Arts, that they're going to have on the site. When they get onto the property and they decide where is the best places to put retention, where are the best trees that they want to try to work around, where should the parking be, that will all be something that's going to probably develop over 50 years. All of their campuses are over 30 years old. The Palm Beach Gardens campus is, I think, 45 years old. Lake Worth campus is 57 years old. So the campuses take a long time to develop, and things in education as well as in the world continue to change. And so they cannot come up with a specific site plan now, but what they can come up with is a master site development plan that sets the framework. It will identify the buffers, it will identify the access points, it will identify and include a set of design guidelines. And those design guidelines are going to speak to what the buildings are going to look like, what are going to be the materials. They're going to have the requirements for tree preservation, for working around existing natural systems. That will all be part of this master site development plan package. In your staff reports, you have draft copies of what has been submitted, was essentially what was presented to you on the March workshop. We will be taking that to your planning and zoning board in July to get their feedback and comments, and then ultimately we'll be bringing it to you, and that is the document that the town council will be approving. The third special policy speaks to a campus master plan, not to be confused with the master site development plan, and unfortunately the names are very similar. What the campus master plan is, this is a document that is mandated by the state that the college prepare every 5 years. It's very similar to your capital improvements plan in your comp plan, where you have to look at your facilities, you have to look at your programs, you have to look at your funding, and you have to say, okay, in the next 5 years, this is what the current condition is, this is what we think is going to happen, and this is how we're going to implement it. Statutorily, the Board of Trustees of the college is required to approve this plan before it gets transmitted to the state. They can't delegate that authority to anybody else. But what they can do, and what they do with all of their other campuses, is they invite the surrounding communities, the municipalities, to provide input. And they don't wait for the last minute either. They have their monthly Board of Trustees meetings. There's opportunity for public comment at every meeting. Those meetings get moved around to all of the campuses. They have listening sessions with the communities before those meetings. So that is where the town gets the opportunity to participate in what's called the Educational Plant Survey, which is what the college does as they start to prepare the data and analysis to create the campus master plan. So they cannot delegate the town authority to do that, but what they do is they welcome the town's input so that they can incorporate that and consider that when they're developing the campus master plan. And as you've seen from the other programs that Dr. Gallon pointed out, they've successfully done that in other communities with the Sugar Institute, with the Biotech Institute. And so they really welcome the opportunity to come out and meet with the town and essentially start those discussions. So I really wanted to point those out because that's the difference between those two special policies. One does require that the town actually approve the master site development plan, and that's what you're going to see that shows the images of how the campus is being developed. The third policy is actually more mandated that the Board of Trustees approve that, but they do want your input. And so the rewording of that special policy was to make sure that you have input as part of the preparation of the educational plan survey, not just at the very end when the campus master plan is created. With that, staff is recommending approval. We appreciate all the effort and work that they've done with us in the development of the special policies. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay.
Thank you.
Question?
No, I got my answers.
Right?
No questions.
None? All right, I've got one comment card. I guess it's for this item. Thais Gonzalez. Yes, Thais?
Thais. Okay, Thais Gonzalez, 13090 Raymond Drive. About this whole thing, I have to say that in a way I'm excited about this college thing. I have 2 little ones that I want them to stay with me forever. I don't ever want them to go away just because they have to go to school, okay? So that's a good thing. But I also think that I'm speaking for most of the residents of Waxahachie Grove about, because I'm very concerned about the impact on our community. Meaning, like earlier, I said that I agree with the roundabout, which I was thinking about the safety of the riders. Okay, I wasn't really thinking about the comment they made about the trailers. I think that would really become a hassle for the residents to have a roundabout there. What I believe it would be the best is to keep the traffic on Southern Boulevard. We have 2 big arteries, which are Crestwood and Seminole Pratt, for the residents of the acreage to come to the south. I also believe that if we open B Road, you know, I would rather stay away from there, not a roundabout or anything, just try to eliminate the traffic. Because I believe that if we open the access through that road, it would pretty much cut Waxahachie Grove in half. It would be this main road in the middle of this thing that we are trying to preserve. And I do believe that most of us, that's what we want, to preserve the town the way it is, rural. And I don't see why they cannot use like Crestwood, which is connected to Royal Palm, or Seminole Pratt. Those are 2 huge arteries. And I believe that's pretty much my comment. I don't think I have anything else to say. So I appreciate you listening. Thank you.
Nina Corning, E-Road. Well, I must say, if Eskimo eats ice cubes, looking at selling them, I feel that some of the speech was wonderful, no doubt. But the speech should have been given to the state. It should have been given to the governor that keeps vetoing the money that they're supposed to get, the grants that they're supposed to get. You here are supposed to be concerned about our little residents. And our little residents needs to make sure that we have enough control over what happens here and that this cut-through traffic is not going to happen. And if this college comes in, we have to shut down. We have to make a promise to ourselves to shut down the northern end of this town, because it will go through it and it will change what this town looks like. And Councilman Chiraghi, you hit the nail on the head. You, once you have passed this, have no further control. The intent is all wonderful language, but it means nothing. To be invited to a meeting where you have no powers, well, you have about as much power as I do right now. I can come up here and I can sing my 2-minute little dinner dong, okay, and that's it. All right? You need to go and take charge of this, ask the questions you need to ask, get all the information, insist that it is being presented to you, and get a complete and clear picture. When you're talking about environment, what I got to read, what they said means nothing. What's written does. Read it through. Understand what they're promising you for a buffer. Understand what they're willing to put in. Understand what they're taking out. We worked very hard on this MOU to have the linear park, to have the trail through there. And none of that was going to impact the traffic through our town and have this kind of impact with this college bill. Now, if you are considering this, and it's a great thing for the Western communities, but you have to understand, if 40th and 140th gets connected better, or even stays open to start having this traffic go through, we have no control over what happens over the canal. And when Mr. Melvin decides that that's going to be a bridge as well, we have North Lake, and then we have North Lake deciding, okay, where is my class coming from? My class is coming from North Lake today, or my class is coming from here. The traffic impact and the push through our town will change us. And that has to be our consideration when we agree to this. We have to keep some powers. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. All right, for motion.
Mr. Mayor, just for the record, you have a, the motion would be to approve the ordinance, unless you do otherwise as recommended by staff, which is set forth on pages 9 and 10 of the staff report, attachment A1. Just to be clear, because you talked about different iterations, I want to say that's what's for you right now as part of that ordinance.
Okay. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
The ordinance, give me the ordinance again, I'll make a motion, include the ordinance.
Will you to read the title again?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to read the actual ordinance. Proposed ordinance 2012-05. An ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Waxahachie Coast, Florida, amending the Town of Waxahachie Coast, Florida comprehensive plan to amend the comprehensive plan text to create special policy 1.15.4 under objective 1.15 of the future land use settlement, which regulates development on the 74.99 acre property located generally at the northwest corner of Southern Boulevard D Road, Waxahachie Coast, Florida, as specifically indicated in Exhibit 1, known as the Palm Beach State College parcel, and 2, amend the future land use map FLU-1.10 to incorporate a specific reference to special policy 1.15.4. Providing for amendment to the comprehensive plan reflects those changes, providing for conflict severability effective date.
It says, ordinance 2012-05. I make a motion we approve.
Okay, so second.
I'll say.
Second by Ron. Comments, we've had public comments by council members. Anybody want to make a comment? You know, sometimes it seems like we're up here and we don't hear anything you say, you know, and we do, but does anybody want to make a comment?
I would make another comment. I mean, I may have sounded harsh, which I intend to. But at the same time, I have a lot of experience in private enterprise and a certain amount of experience in public service. There is a time when you have to assess who you're dealing with, and you develop a certain level of trust, and that sometimes you get in positions where your representation is based on trust in those you're dealing with, and that they were what they said and what they have represented themselves to have done is what you can expect to see in the future. So I would expect that we get into a position, as I understand it, where we've given up our veto and we've entered into more of a situation where it's based on trust, which I don't know now how it's going to be, but I would render a guess at this point. I certainly feel like we're heading down the road that we have dealing with trusted other members of this relationship.
Okay. Ryan, any comments?
Just my same concern is the traffic, and I think with the work with the town and the district and the college, we can come up with a solution. I think one of the things the town can do is, perhaps approach DOT and explain to them the town situation. I don't think DOT really understands what our roads look like. I think they think they're regular roads. I don't think they, it doesn't exactly fit 2 lanes. And I think they come to that understanding, they might be a little more open to having another access point where people can go west on 7. I think if they can understand that, they might be a little more open to that.
Okay. Ron?
I agree with Jim about one thing. There'll come to a point where we'll have to put a lot of trust in the people we're dealing with. And I personally think that in the future, maybe not the near future, we will have a lot of young adults that will be going to that college from Loxahatchee Groves. I believe we're going to start seeing the younger generation come into Loxahatchee in the near future. The roads is going to be a big problem, but I believe as a town working with the Water Control District, and I believe this council, I think we can control how many people travel over our roads and how fast they travel. And I'm thinking, like some people made comments, I know how college kids and especially high school kids, because I'm dealing with high school kids right now, they like to get to school the shortest route and the fastest route. Well, we have control of how fast they can get there. And when they have to go over speed humps and when they have PBSO wait their signing the ticket because we know that they're using our roads, they will take the fast routes because we see no traffic. It won't be so much Royal Palm Beach because they watch that road very well. But Southern Boulevard and Seminole Prattwood is going to be two main roads that are going to be traveled. So I'd like to see us move on with this, and I like the idea.
I have been involved in Loxahatchee Groves for a lot of years, been there for 32 years. For those that know me, I have resisted change in Loxahatchee Groves as much as anybody can, to the point of aggravating a lot of water control board supervisors for 12 years. And you know, and some of the concerns that are real. We're talking about 1,500 parking spaces. But I know at one time, D Road, when it was dirt, I had 1,200 plus trips a day. So we're talking about the 1,500 divided over Southern. We all know that it will go path of least resistance. So hopefully, people want to go on the paved road rather than across the speed humps. And while I see people shaking their head, but you know, it's we cannot stop change. Changes will happen. We would all love to say, I want to move in, but I don't want anybody else to move in around me. I want it to sit like it is. And I think looking at some of the examples of colleges, you know, you see things like in Orlando, Rollins College, right in the middle of a residential area, and it's a beautiful campus. I look at towns in Ohio like Athens, it's 75% college. You know, that is their town. At the same time, in the long run, I'm looking at, if it goes commercial, you have the chance it'll turn out like Albertsons out there, and it's empty. And then it will go through cycles, and you don't always know what you get. And here, we know what we get for the next 25, 30, 40, 50 years. And there is a trust that is built. I see what they do at Palm Beach Gardens. I've heard what they've said here. And it's not like they're a developer that has a habit of running over communities, you know, and leaving everything, you know, a mess in the way. So they've got a good track record, you know, and so from that standpoint, I think they're going to make a great neighbor to Loxahatchee Groves. 40 years from now, I still like to be here, so, you know, I will. But, you know, and my thought is, I don't you? Yeah, there's 20 years, okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. 4-4. Okay, let's take a break before we get into the next one.
Está empezando, muchachos.
First reading of ordinance 2012-07, relates to a rezoning on Southern Boulevard, Searoad, our legal title, ordinance 2012-07. In accordance to the town council, the town of Waukesha goes forward, providing for the rezoning of land consisting of 3 adjoining parcels, totaling approximately 2.1879 acres, more or less, located at or near 15003 and 14955 Southern Boulevard, east of Sea Road, Waukesha goes forward, legally described in Exhibit A to this ordinance, from Palm Beach County zoning designation commercial general CG to the town zoning designation commercial low CL, providing for the appropriate revisions to the zoning district map, providing for the building conflict and effective date. Town manager.
Mayor and council, you had all that high tech on the, I know I should do a little low tech here, but you see the properties in the red at the bottom? Those are the pieces of property that we're talking about. The 3 properties are around 2.18 acres. This is the actual property. This is a survey of the property that he has. And all 3 properties are currently zoned commercial general in the county. This is pretty much a housekeeping function to take it and to create a commercial load within the town. Mr. Morello currently has at least a lessee, British Hay, open and developing parcel 1. You can all see that. And what we provided in your backup, you have all the property appraiser data information. Just a little bit of history. You know, this town, after it was created, it went through a comprehensive plan amendment, it went through the Unified Land Development Code. Then you also had a challenge that you were dealing with after the adoption of the comprehensive plan. You had opted back in 2010, instead of trying to go ahead and do what's called city-initiated rezonings, I call them administrative rezonings, where you go ahead and you try to take care of all the land within the town and have it on an official map. What you guys did back then, by ordinance, you passed an ordinance which basically said that you're going to do it on a case-by-case basis as you have redeveloped. That's really what we're about tonight. You may remember I brought this up a couple of months ago. We're doing this very cheaply, not cost recovery. Staff is actually doing this and processing this. And this is the first step. This is the first reading tonight. And has gone through to the Planning and Zoning Board, sitting as the LPA, and they approved it 5-0. So we're hoping that you will move forward, pass this on first reading. There was a 30-day notice to the owner of the property, so you won't see this for about another month. We'll establish the date after we've taken care of the notice. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. Any questions? Mark, I got a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
I know that commercial general is one thing different from commercial low. Okay, a church could be built on commercial general, but it cannot be built on commercial low. Is that correct?
That may be correct. I don't remember that particular use. I remember there was about 3 uses when we did the analysis. I think one of them was a kennel. I'm not sure about the church. I'd have to check, confirm that when I can, and I'll let you know on the second reading if that is accurate.
All right. Could a strip bar be built on commercial low? You can think about it, because hey, we still got a couple more things.
Was needed.
I mean, that's a very open.
The reason
the way you asked that kind of took you by surprise.
The reason I made that comment is, first of all, right now, a church, if they wanted to buy the property, they can build on Southern Boulevard. When we take that right away, I personally don't like it and allow, something like a strip bar that could be built there. And I believe you're going to find out that that's the way it is. The other thing is, how much is this going to cost the owner of this property to change this zoning? Because I frown on costing the residents money when they had a commercial general prior to us becoming a town.
It's not costing him anything because of the way we're doing it. I'm not doing it through cost recovery. I'm doing it through the staff processing it through.
All right. The other thing that disappoints me greatly is when it becomes commercial low, correct me if I'm wrong, these setbacks are outrageous. He loses so much property because of setbacks. Right there.
That is correct. The current code has a 50-foot rear setback and a 50-foot front setback. And I believe in that case, his property is about 181 feet, so he actually loses pretty much 100 feet. Has a print of about 80 feet.
Okay, I like that. I dislike that. I think it's wrong. I would hope there's some way, I don't know if there is, that why couldn't he maintain that commercial general, just like it is? I read what you said, that we said when people go to redevelop, I believe this place burnt down. Do you remember, Dave? What happened?
No, they had to take it down because of the highway.
Okay. So in other words, he's already got messed up one time because they widened the highway. And now here, the state did that, you know, and I'm not too impressed with what the state does sometimes. But now here we are as a town, we're going to take a little bit more, we change it to commercial low. I personally would like to find out if he can maintain commercial general.
One thing where I would disagree, Councilman, is I don't think we're hurting him by taking him to commercial level. It's my position that if we leave him with a county zone designation, we really can't regulate it. I shouldn't be regulating county land use. It is required that you bring all your land use into conformity with the comprehensive plan. Commercial low is the only category I have to apply to.
Okay, but now we have other places in Loxahatchee that's not commercial low, that are commercial. Okay, because they're existing right now, are you telling me they don't have to change? In other words, we don't have to worry about them? Are you telling me that we don't have any control over them?
We do have one parcel that we discussed, I know what you're talking about, and yes, that was approved in Palm Beach County under a site planning, a master site planning type process. And when we bring them in, we're going to have to look at what category we bring them in. I don't know if we can necessarily bring them in at CL or something that the attorney and I are going to have to look at carefully before we do that one. I mean, I don't see that one coming in for quite some time. I mean, it's kind of out there, and we would have to try to enforce that. I don't see the landlord looking to do that.
I don't either, and I definitely won't mention any names, but I notice how much taxes Mr. Morello's pay in the town, and I know how much taxes this other commercial businesses pay in the town. And it's probably almost $1,000 to $2,000 less. So, you know, I have my problems there. So, you know, I personally would like to see it stay, but like you said, our hands would be tied. But I would believe that commercial general is only going to allow certain things to be built on that property. So, you know, I don't know.
Just a couple things. You know, we don't have the commercial general designation under our code, so
Right.
we've got to match up our code designations with the comprehensive plan for commercial.
By law, we have to match it up. In other words, we can't make an exception. That's what you're
No, we have to have consistency. Now, we're doing this with the property owners' consent and direction. This is not unilaterally from the town with the property owner not agreeing to this change of zoning code. It's the one that matches up with the CG. Again, it's one of these things, if you wanted to, after you go through your comprehensive plan review, take a look at how you have you designated your commercial. I mean, right now, when you did this, you only saw the need for 2 commercial districts, commercial low office. You see the need to look at that table again. That is something that you could do. I wouldn't suggest you do it now because you're looking at the comprehensive plan. But in this particular case, this is being done to resolve a zoning issue, and it's consistent with your direction at the time we did it. It's as people need something from the town, you say, well, we'll work with you so you can do what you want to do, but we've got to make it consistent with our zoning and our comp plan. So that's the process that, you know, we don't have to do we did not have to do a massive redesignation of zoning at the time you adopted all this.
Okay, give me an example if you wanted to fight it. In other words, I hear what you're saying. I know for a fact the one thing that he doesn't like is the setbacks. There's nothing we can do about the setbacks. In other words, when it becomes commercial low, that's law, and we can't waiver anything when it comes to setbacks.
Unless there was a justification for variance.
I have to double check that too, because the setbacks might be very similar in the county again. That I can't, until I go back and check that, I can't tell you for certain. I mean, that may be a good point in terms of whether it's county or zoning.
Right off the top of your head, is there any way we could justify a variance like that or a setback? And that's something you can think about. In other words, I want this to move on because I realize he's wanting something to happen, and I realize we can stop it.
Let me just say, if you want to get into setbacks at some point, that's probably the subject of a more more comprehensive study, not just on the basis of one property, but looking at all the properties. And of course, when you're talking about there, it's not both, because tonight you're talking about looking, I mean, you know, without having history, I can't tell you what the consultant went into when you had your discussions, but I'm sure they had looked at very carefully at why they were selecting those kinds of setbacks, and it's probably due to the fact that it was adjacent to Southern Boulevard. So we want to be very careful. You know, some development schemes, they do like the building up close to the road. That's just, that is a development format that you can use. But in this case, I don't think that's what you all looked at that time.
No, I agree. I think that was one of the things we talked about on everything we've seen come forward is not the continuation of what we see on Southern Boulevard now, where it's basically built to the road. And that's not built to off-section growth that we like to see. It's there, that's kind of the way it is. But I'm interested in can we get an answer to, I'm not sure why Ron asked the question, but can we prohibit a strip joint from going in there?
It's permitted with certain regulations. In that you have adult regulations, and there's distance requirements from schools, churches, bus stops, and other requirements that are specific to it. So it's currently submitted with about.
How far is it up to a church? What's the distance?
1,000 feet.
1,000 feet.
There's no churches
And it's 1,000 from daycare, schools, and other places of education. 1,000 feet from government offices, 2,500 feet from school bus stop.
You can always put it in school bus stops.
Just a word on that. The reason why you have it like that, and I'm surprised, it seems like there aren't a lot of conditions on those, but the reason why you have that listed as a permitted use is basically to avoid legal challenges. Normally when you don't provide for the use, and they want to come in, that's generally the way they have infiltrated communities by the fact that you've had standards that weren't enforceable. One of the ways you get around that, though, is, and I should say you get around that, one of the ways you protect yourself is you provide for a lot of appropriate conditions and safeguards to be placed on these establishments, so that ideally you make it, you know, it's not as lucrative for them to try to enter your community. And
Like hours
maybe
of
we need,
operation.
and we may need to beef that section up if that's a concern. There may not be, and there's probably a lot of regulation you can add to that. So I'll take a closer look at them and give you some info.
I mean, I think hours of operation could be something. Would we be able, as a community, to extend those distances? You know, like 1,000 feet for a church is really pretty short distance.
You probably can. I know one of the techniques used was you don't allow them to sell liquor. So that's a little more radical, but that's been done.
Yeah.
I think it may be a special exception use as well. You may have to go through a special exception process.
Okay. All right.
Again, I'm not sure why I asked this question.
I was trying to give you something to think about.
I know he's looking for another business opportunity, but I wasn't sure where we were going with it. Are we ready for a motion, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I think so.
Please. I make a motion that we approve ordinance 2012-07.
The second?
I'll second it.
Second by Ron. Further discussion?
I'd still like to see the differences between the commercial general and our commercial low. I feel a little uncomfortable making a decision until I know what exactly are the differences. I'm a little concerned if for instance, if the owner, you know, he bought the property and it was existing commercial general and he had plans to do something with it, which would qualify under commercial general, but wouldn't qualify anymore under commercial low. You know, possible ramifications to the town, what would happen.
I will bring those with me for the second reading, although I will tell you, we went over those with the property owner at the time. We were pleasantly surprised, and he was pleasantly surprised, that we had expected that there was going to be a lot of variance between the county and the town, and it really wasn't as much as we thought. But I will bring those in at second reading.
Okay. I just wish there was some way we could make him rebuild Gary's.
Yeah,
It's a good place. All right, we have a motion and a second. I have no public comment cards. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passed. All right, moving to 06. Moratorium.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, this is second reading and additional second public hearing of ordinance, proposed ordinance 2012-06, and I read the title. An ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Black Sage, Florida, providing for a moratorium until November 30th, 2012, on the processing and review of applications for amendments to the town's comprehensive plan, including future land use amendments, text amendments within the corporate boundaries of the town as of April 17th, 2012, providing for exemptions, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, providing for effective date.
All right. Will I entertain a motion? Okay, we have a motion. Second. Second by Ryan.
Mr. Mayor, this is a public hearing.
Okay. So, comments by the public? All right, comments by the council? The only thing I would like to state, Mark, is I would really like to get going on, in other words, I really don't want to just set a moratorium and then 6 months from now, let's renew it. You know, I'd really like to get something going as far as establishing a percentage along with Chobe, something we can live with, some uses along there that kind of gives us guidelines that we can all buy into.
Probably at your next meeting, I'll bring this back to discuss how we're going to do it, who's going to do it, that kind of thing, and we'll also get some direction. Or at that point, you believe there's a need for a workshop discussion or whatever, so we can do it.
Okay. I mean, our intent of low impact non-residential, we want it more reflective of something we can deal with, and deal with planning and so on. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
4-0.
4. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, item 6.
Item 6, I read the resolution. Turn it over to the town manager, resolution 2012-06, a resolution of the town council of the town of Black Sage, Florida, adopting a budget amendment to the town's budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2011, and ending September 30, 2012, providing for severability, conflicts, and effective date.
All right. Mark?
Only additional comments, council, are that brings the budget into balance over the course of time from the beginning of this fiscal year. We did bring it to the FAAC, and I don't believe Cheryl may have mentioned that, I don't know if I missed it, but basically they have approved the recommended respect.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion for approve resolution 2012-06.
Your second.
I'll second.
Second by Jim. Discussion by council.
Yeah, Mark, would you just go over that briefly so that those that hear that haven't seen it can understand what we're doing?
Basically, for all the funds, the general funds, the management company has taken and moved different numbers or updated as it relates to if the revenues are coming in at a lower level than expected at this point. Where a lot of the changes are made are in the expenditure side, specifically legislative. There were a number of changes made based upon the present budget and how the current detail is going as we go through the budget year. Probably one of the biggest changes I would call out is the management contract. As you know, there was that amendment as it related to planning and zoning services. We originally had it placed under the executive under the contractual administration. FAAC recommended that we show it as a change under professional services and planning and zoning. That's why you see that number there at 31,250. There are other changes, for example, like account number 315, 519, 315-00, special magistrate. We made a change of $17,000 to reflect the current charges that have been accruing in that particular. Another big one there that I pointed out, $22,000, was for all the related computer repair that we talked about since we taken over management as of October 1st. We did take a lot of this out of contingency. You see the contingency reduced by $44,800. There was some concern by the FAAC in terms of the use of contingency. What we have pledged is that it is probably appropriate that at some point in time, we do a policy relative to the use of contingency. And we'll bring that forward later date and give you some ideas on how that should be addressed. Everything balances out with 54,000. Transportation fund, there were some minor changes, some non-district 6 cents moved to the road and streets, and there were no changes in capital or solid waste. And so for all funds, there was $54,000 in changes, having your budget balance at $4,082,674.
Okay, now, we'll shoot you one more time. At a higher level, general fund, you took revenues, net, where, and how much? Again, expenditures, you took.
Revenues, the major changes were under intergovernmental revenues. We added $20,000 to cost recovery fees to represent activity that's occurring within that particular area. And we added, this is something you'll be very happy that we added $35,000 in code enforcement funds. Recently, we received a check for $35,000, $35,000 change from Wells Fargo due to a issue we had, a fine that was assessed and a lien on property on the road. They were closing. Wells Fargo wanted to close with the new property owner, and they agreed to pay us that amount of money to settle, and so they could close. And now we have a new 60-day clock on the new owner who agreed to take care of the violations. So that's also reflecting that $35,000.
That's a C road property? A road.
And then there was miscellaneous income, some minor changes there.
All right, so we took our revenues up. The biggest single item was $35,000. And we took our expenditures up specifically to handle our change in contract with the management firm, right? And I don't recall any other significant increases. Okay, so, and on net or general fund, as a balance, you balanced,
2,000.
we balanced it with our contingency fund going down.
That's correct.
So bottom line,
Contingency was reduced from 2012, 124, and adopted budget to 267,000.
okay, which is still a substantial contingency. And then as far as you mentioned on transportation, there's just some tweaks, and nothing on,
Right, the other funds were not touched.
I just wanted, I mean, because not everybody is reading this, and they'd like to maybe just at least have a rough idea of what we're.
Okay. All right, any other comments by Councilman? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 4-0. Okay, moving to administrative update.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. First down there, first item is the intergovernmental committee report. We had a meeting on the 18th of June. And as we discussed, a couple of meetings I reported on, the specific topic of the entire meeting was to discuss the current interlocal agreements that the town has with the water control district. The management company made a proposal to take both current interlocal districts and interlocal agreements and attempt to merge them into one document. Cleve has provided the information to Mary Viator. I have provided the information to Mike to get the committee wanted respective attorneys to give their thoughts on that as to what they thought about merging the agreements. The district has been consistent in terms of asking for $150,000 from the town. However, the town has not, at this point in time, come up with a figure. We're still in the process of debating and discussing that as we go forward. I know the district will be discussing that issue again on July 9th. We have recommended to them, just as we probably will, there'll be several meetings in July and August on the budget, and that they may have to call for a second meeting. And then once we have the input from the attorneys, and we're going to talk about it a little more, obviously, if the attorneys feel that merging both interlocals into one interlocal can't work, then we'll we'll readjust on that. The second part, we did have a lot of discussion relative to current billing this year and some of the issues that we're still trying to work out with the district in terms of those submitted documents. And there's been a lot of discussion about either local as it relates to road grading and some of the other services the district provides to potentially enhance them, do some of the things we've talked about in previous meetings, like hedging and things like that. So the next meeting was tentatively scheduled for the 29th this week, but I am recommending the committee move back a couple of weeks, and then we can talk about it a little further once we've had a chance to hear from the attorneys. And so we'll continue to work on this as it has budget implications for this year. Councilman Rocket took over this month as our representative. That was his first meeting as he goes through his next 3 months. So,
Mark, if I may add,
yes, sir.
Part of the conversation I had in that meeting was that I would recommend to the council that we look for the Water Control District before they ask for a share of the gas tax, that they go through and basically create a budget that's as lean and mean as you can make it. In essence, go back to last year's 13, without the $13 increase, what would it take to survive? Assuming that they would come up with some shortfall, but they have to do lots of other, look at a lot of other things before they just come forward and kind of, I don't want to be in a situation where we're always here to kind of, you count on us, we'll bail you out, no matter what it might be. So I just felt like we needed better scrubbing of the budget before so that we can have a better idea of really what the hardship is that they're running into. The second piece of the conversation we had was that there's a level of service that policeman was working on as to an estimate of what we might want to add to what we've provided to the non-district roads in the past. So he's kind of doing a projection, and that in and of itself will be a source of income, an increased source of income to the Water Control District, which certainly would be folded into how they would approach their resource usage going forward. So there, as we go into our piece of that discussion, it's a little more complex this year, I think, than last, and I'm trying to make sure that all that front-end work is done before we get to see it and get involved, and make it a little easier for us to kind of see what the real need is. And again, it's a lean and very mean kind of approach. I've made some suggestions about things that I think would be nice to have and that are in fact nice to have.
Yeah, I would like, and I know Jim, we've been in agreement on this, is to look into, we've talked about somehow easing the cost of some of the people that have voted for ODing their roads. D Road is going to get one without cost. We're trying to help out. So there's a lot of people that voted for it. We ran different economic times there. So, we talked about trying to equalize it a little bit with some of this gas tax funds. So, if we can do something like that and initiate it in that committee, I think it's probably the right place to figure out how we can do it.
Without getting into a large discussion on the merits of that, one thing the management company has taken a position, obviously it's your call in terms of whatever dollar amount you want to work out in terms of the local agreement with the district. My recommendation to you is that you not use gas tax funds, however, that you use some other revenue sources. We'll give you a recommendation on that, but we would recommend using gas tax funds.
You would not recommend using gas?
Would not.
Okay. And my only thought of using gas tax is you can't use it for anything else but roads.
Well,
and all the rest of the money, we can use it for whatever we need to.
yeah, there's a bigger issue there, and you'll be hearing more from us about that in the next several weeks.
Okay.
Without getting into that.
But I think we would help probably more of the people. I mean, you talk about the biggest bank, buck, I mean, to help the people with that anyway. All right.
Mr. Mayor, relative to your comment about system, you talked about that system on the road cost, and it has a bearing as to the timing of when we make a decision based on what bills or value of bills that are going to be sent out. We have now, I believe, gotten more actual data per road per segment. If you want, we don't have an absolute level of, let's say, support down to, but my approach has been that we start with, if we were to assume that the residents paid no more than $100 an acre, what would that mean? We can always, it's easy to move off of that exercise in increments from there further down or up. It's not that much if we start with 100 per as the max that they pay, because some may be actually under 100 or close to it. I think South Sea is the most expensive piece for the reason that that's the way it works out. So I'll move ahead with that as I'm trying to look for some point to start with, and we can have that conversation, I think, and make sure we have the council and discuss funding issues.
Okay. All right, I've got Virginia Standish regarding the roads.
Virginia Standish, 15410 North Road, and I'm speaking to Mr. Runkett's comment about a lean and mean budget from the Waxahachie Groves Water Control District. An example I can give you, some residents had questioned the $150 charge for the speed hump paving, and a specific example is on North Road. I believe we paid $150 for painting and markers. Yet on F Road, the same company is charging $150 simply for painting. So I think lean and mean, they need to make sure there's also consistency in what they're being charged for.
Thank you, Richard. All right.
That was kind of hard. We kind of had a side deal on that. What was the thing called? I don't know if they realized there was a discrepancy at the time.
Can I answer that question?
Sure. Wow. Looking at each time we go forward with those extras.
The actual speed humps cost $450 per, actually, as I recall. And it was broken out in a separate line item as an extra cost. So there's not an apples to apples comparison there, and I'd be happy to discuss that with Virginia later. So please don't just take that on face value. The painting costs on one are not the same as what is included in the other line items, the unit costs in the other projects.
Okay, thank you. All right, John.
John Ryan, 3508 A Road. I'm representing the district in the IGC meetings right now. On the 18th, we planned on a follow-up meeting to address several of the items on Friday, the 29th of this week. That was allowing 11 days to get input from the law firms, and it was allowing time for you to meet with Clea and go over some of the presentation issues that Jim Mockett was concerned with. I just found out today that Mark is not available on the 29th. The problem that we've had is trying to work the dates. The Board of Supervisors meeting is July 9th. I think that we could probably, work out another date, but we are talking about special meetings, which makes, a little more difficult for everyone to schedule this time of year. I think we'll work with the town on trying to reschedule it, but time is short, and the budget requests related to the gas tax, even if we don't call it gas tax, for the coming year is important. Also very important is that the town and the district have been going back and forth on documenting more than sufficient expenditures to support the current year's allocation from the gas tax or whatever source the town wants to use. The town's been sitting on a spreadsheet and detailed documentation. I'd like to ask the council to encourage the town to complete the review in the next day or two and go ahead and pay that so that we know what our cash balance is going into the discussion with regard to the request for the coming fiscal year.
Can I comment on that, Mr. Mayor? Sure. I'll certainly see if that's appropriate, but we got that, and it's that thick. And that was dumped on us, and our financial staff has been reviewing it. It's not like we're holding it and sitting around. And I do know they have a number of questions still, so I don't know if that can be done in a day. I'll check tomorrow and see where we're at. I don't know if that can be done.
The only thought I've got on it, though, is a lot of the gas tax money just is based on the amount of miles that are district roads and the amount of miles that are town roads. So I don't understand why there'd be any question that we would hold up the funds for the district mileage.
That's not, the funds aren't being held up because of gas tax. The funds are being held up because of inappropriate information that was submitted in the bill, primarily. Two different issues.
Okay.
The other thing I just wanted to say in defense of the attorneys, I got the information from Mr. Cirillo last Friday. That was, our meeting was on Monday, and I indicated, I believe, to the committee that we probably won't get it to the end of the week because I was busy getting our agenda out, which, as you know, is quite voluminous. So, again, I don't want you to think that Mike is not, doing his job in terms of getting comment to us.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I saw the package of detail, and it's not an issue with not intending to pay it or not trying to pay it. It's a matter of having sufficient documentation to support the payment. Okay. It's not anything other than that, and it's our perspective, and I think the staff's perspective, that they have enough support that they could sustain an audit without a problem. And I think the documentation is sufficient on the surface from what we saw, but definitely have to go through it, and I imagine there's going to be a few questions. I don't see, if we talked a little bit before earlier about trust with the college. End of September is not right around the corner. It might be to some, but not in my way of thinking. So we got until September 30th to actually step up and make things right. I would think we'd be well ahead of that pace if we get done in July.
Right. Please go ahead.
I just say, we do not have till the end of September, Councilman Rocket.
For us to give you the payment for this year.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's what I'm talking about, just this year.
Sorry.
Frank Shalom, Marcel Boulevard. There's really not too much I can say about the Water Control District budget because that is upcoming. There's another supervisor here, so it would be inappropriate to discuss it in length and detail. But I can tell you that I did have a brief meeting with Cleet while you guys were discussing the college, and we did talk about the budget, and we are looking at what Councilman Rocket did say about cutting the budget and showing where we are cutting the budget. I would just like to have as many of the council people as possible at our next Water Control District meeting so you can hear it firsthand that this is where we're cutting, this is what we're doing to go and try to, basically, cut to the bone. And, we have a couple of former district supervisors up there, and they know that we don't want to raise assessments, and that is the golden rule. Don't raise taxes, don't raise assessments. So, we're going to be looking to hold the line. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. All right.
What I've always said, and our management, to me, it doesn't matter where the money comes from, okay? And I don't consider billing the district out $150,000. I mean, they've got district roads, and we're collecting gas tax funds per mile for district roads and town roads. And I don't, like I said, I don't care if it comes out of the gas tax funds. I don't care if it comes out of the contingency fund. If my management team tells me that legally right now it needs to come out of the contingency funds and we have more than we need right now, then I say, do what you got to do. I know the district has to let the people know. They can't wait till September when it comes to the budget. I believe at their next meeting, they will have to come up with an increase or a recommended increase. I'm tired of us scaring people in Loxahatchee, making them think that we've got to raise their assessments up $18, $20. We've got a town now, we've got the funds, it's not going to break us. When we give $150,000 to the water control district, the purpose is to keep the district from raising assessment fees, and affects every landowner in Loxahatchee Groves. We're not throwing money to the wind, we're throwing it back to the taxpayers. And I personally would like to see a consensus tonight. I believe we can have a consensus. We've got our legal staff, the water control's got their legal staff, coming up with a game plan of how it's got to be worded and the correct way to do it. But I have a hard time understanding why tonight we can't give the district a consensus that, hey, we've got $150,000 that we're going to give the water control district to keep you from raising assessments this year. And it's not going to break us. We've got capital improvement money we've set aside. We've come up with some ideas how to spend it, but you know, we're halfway through the year. But when it comes to this assessment being increased to the taxpayers, I would like to see the council at least have a consensus tonight, after everything gets organized, that we will give the district $150,000. Basically, we're putting it back into the town. We're not paying some contractor to do some work. The money is staying within the town, and we're keeping assessments from being increased, and we're keeping the district from telling the taxpayers that they've got to increase their assessments this year to survive. We all should know what the reserve of the water control district is. It's always been low. It's been lower than what their people recommend them when they do their annual thing. For 9 years, for 12 years, we kept it low when Clete recommended that we increase it to survive and to build up a reserve. But we managed to keep it low, and it has gotten easier. The county kept it low by putting $180,000, $300-something thousand, $1.4 million in the Loxahatchee. Okay, when we became a town, we had the opportunity to keep the assessments low by supporting the water control district. We talk about communications, we talk about working together for the benefit of the town. So I'm asking for a consensus tonight from this council, is if we can, I guess you kind of promised $150,000 to the water control district to keep them from raising assessments. I support it.
All right, we're going to discuss it. Let's just discuss it, and then see where it goes. Okay, comments?
Well, from what I understand, it's just a clarification of some issues, and once that gets clarified, the funds get sent over. I mean, hopefully we can resolve it soon, and that'd be it. I think we all agree that we'd like to try to keep taxes and assessments down. So right now, I don't see the issue right now, other than trying to clarify some problems.
Okay.
My comments at an IG meeting was not that we do not, that we as a council don't keep in mind that we're trying to keep the assessment flat. My comments were based on a simple concept. We are entrusted with funds as a town. We can spend them as we see fit. But when we spend them on our own budgeted line items, we scrub our budgets before we allocate funds. We don't get to scrub the budget for the water control district. We can certainly ask them to scrub it, and it'll come back. But one of the things that I asked specifically, rather than have to get into it before, but I'll lay it out here now, is until most of the people in this community get automatic increases in their pay every year, I want to see that out of the water control district budget. I don't believe in it. I want to represent, I want to spend our money as if the people in this community are spending it. If they're not getting increases automatic, that should not be in an automatic, should not be in the budget. I don't know if it's taken a nickel out of the assessment, but it's got to be addressed. Things like that, that the people of this community are subject to in their spending and their income. We ought to apply the same rules. At least we can go back and say, this is what has been done. We're trying to reflect on tight times, and everybody should maybe be playing by the same rules. We're spending people in this community's money. It comes to us, we just distribute it, but it's theirs. So it's not a matter of whether we want to help or step forward, that we won't step forward at some point to hold assessments like we have tried to do. I think council's been consistent. I mean, last year we didn't have a choice. We could have, I guess, thrown some more money to the wind, but it was beyond our control, beyond the Water Control District. They had to raise assessment. But other than that, we've been pretty effective and successful. I expect it will continue. But I don't expect to consider putting money into balanced budget until somebody has done a scrub job to say, I don't have an automatic increase in here. Now, the council may disagree with me. You know, I'm only one. But I don't think the majority of people in this community get an automatic increase, and I don't think we should be spending money on an operation without them taking that out, along with some other things. So that's what I was talking about. Nobody was saying we have to balance the budget.
My thought is, we've got two different governing entities here in Los Angeles Groves. And I think it's important to keep the two that are here. I am really not in favor too much of either one totally subsidizing the other, because it really is not coming out of the same pockets. You've got people with maybe ag exemptions that don't pay any taxes to the town, and their only way of our community receiving taxes is through an assessment. So I want an assessment to be fair. Yeah, I might have to pay a little more in one, but hopefully it balances out. So that's, to me, the important part of having the two. We all know that most towns that absorb the water control boards, the first thing they do is pile the taxes onto the property owners so that they balance their town off the backs of the large landowners. At the same time, I do not want to subsidize the larger landowners on the backs of the homeowners in Los Angeles Groves. So I think it's very important that we keep the balance. It works well that way. I happened to be part of the Water Control Board years ago when they made a determination they were not going to raise the taxes for about, 6 or 7 years. What ended up is we were almost broke. We had no contingency. We had nothing for storms. We had absolutely nothing. So what happened is we had to go a huge raise just to get back in the ballpark. And this place was jammed. How can it go up 30%, 35% because the previous 5 or 6 years everybody said we're not going to raise them? We just kept taking money out of contingency. So you know what? I would have rather paid a little bit a year, for the cost than I would have it go flat for 5 years and then all of a sudden have it jump 30%. So I want to make sure that we give them every penny that is coming to them from the gas tax money on the roads. I want to make sure that we work out a fair deal on the work that they're going to do for us on the town roads to get that money going to them, because it's going to benefit both sides. But at the same time, I don't know what I'm getting into just to say, well, I'll give them $150,000. So anyway, that's where I'm at. If you want to make a motion, Ron, you can make a motion.
I'll make a motion that we take a consensus that after everything's figured out between legal and stuff, and like Jim said, he wants to know that they're cutting the budget. So one comment about last time I checked, and I'm sure other people have checked, our people in the water control district, they don't make as much as the people around. But they're going through the benefits and all that stuff right now. They're trying to put all that together and compare it. But when it comes to the salary now, when it comes to the cash in hand, they definitely do not make what Indian Trail makes and other people around them makes. But no, and I do believe I would like to see them scrub their budget. I believe Cleet's done an excellent job every year. He tries to look out for his people, tries to look out for himself. He's got a board of supervisors that have broken pretty hard on him this year. And So he's made some changes, but I'll make a motion that we just do a consensus, because he does have to let them know at the next meeting what the potential is. In other words, if everything gets straightened out, is he going to get that $150,000 from the county? So I'll make a motion, if that sounds right, that we do a consensus, whether they'll get their $150,000 or not.
Are you going to make a motion that we promise
Motion,
them?
that the figure to be proposed to the district for the interlocal agreements would be $150,000.
Right, I believe that's what they were talking at the intergovernmental meeting, right, 150,000. Okay, so I'll make a motion that the proposed agreement for,
That the figure for the proposed agreement is $150,000.
okay, that the figure for the proposed agreement is $150,000 that the town will give the water control district.
Is there a second? Where was the $150,000 supposed to come from? Was that gas tax money for the rest? Or was that
The town council elects to give $150,000, we will give you a revenue source, it'll be from reserve somewhere.
So it was just on top of the gas tax money?
No.
Place of the gas tax.
In other words, instead of coming out of the gas tax funds, management recommends that it comes from another source, because of what they're trying to figure out about gas.
There's some other issues that
Okay, and there must be, because, I mean, we keep accumulating gas tax money, and there's not a whole lot we can spend it on, except for roads. And so I thought, boy, this is a great way of doing it, because we were able to give the district the mileage that they have for the roads, and then we use the rest for the town roads. And if we can't do that and have to take it out, in the future, our millage rate will have to go up. We're trying to get it to zero, and it'll have to go up, because if that's, that's kind of the way governments grow, and we have to be careful of that.
One question, Mark, if the council directed you to take it out of gas tax funds, you would, right? You don't recommend it, but you could.
We, obviously, if you direct us to do that, we'll do that, but we would tell you probably in writing that we don't believe you should do that.
One of the comment, I'm going to guess here, I don't have the numbers, but I don't know if 150,000 achieves a flat rate year to year. I don't know that. So even if we were to agree on 150,000, we may have to come back and say, well, our rate's going to go up. I think we need to know its potential. We don't know. I don't know that we know 150,000 will solve your problem.
We're still going to be taking money out of our reserves.
Oh, I just think it's
And the rate would be a proposed flat rate.
from a year ago.
Yeah.
Well, that's, I know we're targeted, so I think we're just a little ahead of ourselves possibly in knowing what really needs to be done.
And I guess I just need to know, I mean, like I say, my fear is we're going to raise this gas tax amount to where someday that'll be bigger than the town money that we have. Oh, we'll have this big chunk of gas tax money, to use on roads, and we won't be able to use it on roads.
Well, there'll be some things, Mayor, we'll be able to use it on very soon. Very soon.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, just to clarify, I appreciate Mr. Gerald's efforts to get a consensus, and that's typically, not typically, but essentially what we discussed at the IGC meeting was just an acknowledgement that if contingent upon us working out the interlocal agreement to the mutual satisfaction of you as a council and my board, we would be looking at $150,000 in wherever it comes from, okay? And be able to have that information and say, yes, the council at least is consenting to the fact that they are willing to give this money to this, contingent upon working out an acceptable interlocal agreement between the two parties. I can present a budget to the board with that statement that says that, and that we could possibly, I haven't put my pencil to it, but I'm pretty sure we can keep the assessment rate, roll it back to where it was before, and still have contingent, still take some out of our reserves to offset any difference in addition to the $150,000. Now, in addition to that, as Mr. Rocket stated, I don't want to take up a lot of your time, there is a proposal on the table to do maintenance on your town roads that is far exceedingly above what we've been doing at any time in the history of this district since we started doing courtesy grading before the town incorporated.
Sure.
All right, the level of service we provided on your roads amounts to a few $1,000s a year in services, and that's it. Okay? We're talking a significant amount of attention that we would be giving to these roads that would be include grading, watering, mowing, and hedging, possibly even digging swales and creating situations where you can drain the roads off. Okay? That is a significantly larger cost, and also could play a part in us not having to draw from reserves if we can provide that service for you. So tonight, I think if what I heard Mr. Gerald say is that if y'all would just give an acknowledgement, maybe I'm speaking out of turn, that you would at least would be willing to give us up to $150,000 for the district road maintenance portion of our budget. That's what we're looking at, contingent upon some acceptable agreements being worked out later. And I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but that's what would desire, if that's possible. If not, I understand.
Okay. Well, I think the way I understood it from Councilman Gerald was a little different from the way I understood it from Cleve. The way I understood it from Ron was just carte blanche. We'll give them $150 to help keep the assessments down. The way I understand it from Cleve, providing that both the town and the district can have a mutual agreement. That I'm more favorable to, just because I misunderstood how Councilman Gerald was trying to present it.
Okay. Chuck?
I'd like to follow up on one thing. We understand the town wants to be able to document the basis for transferring any funds. On the Friday before the meeting on the 18th, which would be, several days, like 13 days, Clete had assembled, working with Carmen, a spreadsheet with different categories of expenditures and an itemized listing of all expenditures under each category to more than substantiate the $150,000 request for the current year. And each one of the listed expenditures had a copy of the original warrant invoice that related to that amount. Now, it was a big stack of paper, but, the presentation was what, in addition to having full access to the district records for any audit question, here's a copy of categorized expenditures that more than exceeded the amount to draw down the $150,000 for the current year. Now, $150,000 on our assessable acres is $19.05 an acre. Now, if we don't have $150,000 for this year, that's $19.05 of an assessment equivalent. I met with Clete and we're working to comply absolutely with the concerns of the town that Councilman Rocket expressed. Scrub our numbers, to look at use of the reserves, to pull down our reserves, to accomplish what we want for the coming year. But one concern I've got is what is the town management doing to withhold the $150,000 that's been approved for the current fiscal year? I mean, I know they've got a lot on their plate, but 13 days and having it organized the way it was presented, I really don't want to go to the July 9th meeting and not have that $150,000 in the bank. Okay.
Thank you, John. All right, any other comments? All right. Is someone saying they want to change their mind to second the motion? Because right now we've got a motion, we've got a second.
Yeah, I'll change my mind and second that motion. With the understanding of how please.
Okay. I am still confused. I mean, and there's something here that I don't know about. But I mean, I just, do not want this gas tax money to keep growing and growing when we can't use it for anything else. And
we will be proposing use of
all right, what's your recommendation, Mark? Your staff.
As to
Let's do this motion. Are we going to recoup it as a town? Are we going to be able to, I mean, you tell me. I mean, we can't explain it to me now, but give me an idea of where you stand.
We started at 0, not because we're trying to be difficult, but we don't think that the funds should be provided. our fiduciary responsibility. And as we move forward, I think that number starts to move up. Our position has always been that we don't believe the gas tax should be used, and ultimately the town council wants to make that award of $150,000, and the board might not be the best word, but to the district, we don't have a problem with that. If you direct us to do that, we will do it. Our position is that we would recommend that that come out of reserve. We also, we do believe that with the changing of the interlocal agreement, with the district taking on additional types of work, that the opportunity will be there, kind of as Cleve has indicated, for them to also incur, obtain additional revenue from the town for doing this work for us. But at this point, I don't think I can give you a yes or no answer that you should give them $150,000. I think, that's entirely up to you, up to the city.
Mr. Mayor, we're looking at the issues relating to the roads in the big picture right now, and one of the things that we want to do is at your next meeting on the 17th is come back with you with our conclusions. For example, one of the projects you had us look at earlier on was collecting canal, and getting that project done. And we've been meeting with the Water Control District and looking at the records and confirming the factors on that road and how the money could be spent and spent appropriately for that compared to what you did at North Road. It's a case by case, and what we're finding is that although it's a case by case, there's some common denominators, and there needs to be a plan or proposal to deal with the roads in the town, whether they be district roads or non-district roads. They're all public roads, whether they're maintained and operated by the district. We call those the district roads, and the ones that they don't do because they're not related to district business, we call them town roads. But the conception in this town, since I've been working with laws, that they're public roads, they have labels because they need to be because of operational issues and whatnot. But when we started looking at these roads projects that you directed earlier this year, we started noticing some common issues that we think need to be dealt with on a policy level. And what we're hoping to be able to do is bring you back some more information at the next meeting, because we're still gathering that information. So the funding source ties into some of that, but I don't know as far as tonight saying you can or cannot do something with absolute certainty, but I do think it ties into what we'd like to give you on the 17th.
I've got nobody from staff that can tell me which way I should go this way.
I think there's a difference between making a policy decision and working with the district on the budgetary issue. I'm not here to give you a recommendation, but I'm saying the policy, the motion was to convey this 150. Where it comes from is a different issue. If you want to tie them together, that's your prerogative. But I can't give you a recommendation because I don't do that. I just give you some advice there. You have traditionally, though, work with the district and sort of do those issues.
All right. Okay, Thais, first off.
Clarify one final thing.
Okay.
There are two different issues. The $150,000 for the fiscal year 2013 going forward in terms of justifying that in the documentation is one issue. Separate issue is the town staff for 13 days has had complete documentation, and I would refer to Cleve, but I saw the spreadsheet, the outline, and understand that each item that was included to more than justify the $150,000 that was approved for the current year was documented. Now, if somebody wants to go through and tally each one of the items, I don't think that takes more than a few hours. But I'd like to see that done with an instruction from the town council that that work be completed before our meeting on July 9th, because that amount's already been approved for the current year.
Right. Thank you, John. Okay, Thais.
Okay, I kind of feel like we've been going around in circles. I may be wrong, but what I do understand is that the $150,000 will be given to the district as long as it's justified. We're just looking into what that stack of paper has, if it's justified or not. And a complete different issue is where the funds are coming from. What I'm getting from Mr. Cudney is that if we do use the gas money, that could bring other complications that he's been kind of like going around and doesn't really want to mention right now. But it sounds to me like it's going to bring lots of other complications. So,
Yeah.
did I get it right? Yes. Okay.
Yeah, you did good, and I understand it. But I don't make decisions up here without being convinced something's going on, so anyway. All right, we have a motion and a second. We're talking about a one-time deal?
Well, your motion was to agree on a 150,000 figures for purposes of moving forward with the
It's
sewer.
2013, one time.
Consensus, and I'm not saying that the funds will be available by their meeting, but I'm saying the funds would be available provided we resolve the issue.
All right. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. And opposed? Opposed. And I'm going to vote for it, again, for the trust issue, but, you know, we'll go forward from there. All right, motion passes 3-1. But I really want to use the gas. All right. Moving to new business.
I still got two more questions.
Okay, sorry.
Actually, Mike kind of covered it. I just wanted to let the council know that on the 21st, Mike and I met with Mary Weismore and Cleve was very helpful, provided a lot of information. As Mike has indicated, there are some issues that we still need to investigate and work out, and we probably have one more meeting, and we'll be bringing it back to you, talking to you all as it relates to the Clinton Town Road. In terms of the FAC, I was out returning a phone call. Vice Mayor Rocket mentioned to me during the break that the report, on your committee report, FAC, Cheryl mentioned only April. Your agenda item, if that's the case, your agenda item does talk about approval of the April and May financial reports. So she may not have mentioned May, possibly. So if that is the case, you should probably amend that motion to do April and May.
Okay.
Yeah, I need to amend that motion to approve April and May financial.
I'll second as amended.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right. Anything else, Mark?
No, that's it.
Okay. Moving on to new business. Now, these two items were a couple of Tom's issues, correct?
The new business, no, sir.
Okay.
Not really. The first one, if you want me to go into it,
Go ahead.
that's the proposal for the Unified Land Development Code Amendment as it relates to sales. Just to, remember at your June 5th meeting, well, let me start a little before that. We had a complaint that was filed by a citizen relative to the sale of hay by 3 different entities within the town. Went through the process. We found that, in our review, that these entities were in violation. One of those was Janet Ike on her property. At your last meeting, you discussed that. They were here. You gave us some direction that you would like us to go back and look at ULDC. In the staff report before you, what I identified, the town attorney, town planner, myself, we all looked at this, and we decided, and the paragraph before fiscal impact, I think, talks about where we're heading with this, that we're regulating the size of the operation to residents who reside at the property, that we're permitting the operation to conduct business by those resident owners such that the enterprise is not vested in land, but with that particular property owner, and it would cease once they basically stop operating the business, and that they would have to get a valid business tax receipt, and we're looking at other conditions that we would go ahead and review as we do the amendment. We have recommended that the town manager would take on this particular assignment, and we have provided a work authorization. We believe we can do the amendment and take it through the adoption process at a cost of $7,220. Of course, the quote does not include advertising costs and town attorney review fees. And based upon the direction you've given, we recommend that you move forward with the amendment and authorize it as in the staff report.
All right. Entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion that we authorize town manager and staff to move forward with the amendment as articulated in this report and approve the work authorization regarding the same.
Okay, second.
I'll second.
Okay, second by Jim. Discussion by council members?
I was led to believe that Red Farm covered some of the HC sales, and I understand the staff did a little research on that. Could you?
Well, Mike and I have been talking about the Red Farm Act and all the agricultural regulations that relate to not only this issue, but a number of issues. One of the things with the Right to Farm Act, and I don't like to go down this road because it's not as black and white or clear cut, but generally, usually with Right to Farm Act, you're also dealing with somebody who is actually producing a farm product on the property. It's not always the case, but that's the way that act was specifically designed in the early 90s because it was dealing with trying to protect farms against code enforcement and encroachment, where you had property encroaching on the existing farm, there were no nuisances and things like that. In this case, I don't know if it's right on point. I defer to Mike because I think in this case, in some of the situations, you're just talking about a retail sales without necessarily any kind of production on the property. I mean, all three of these issues that we have looked at from a code enforcement standpoint, there were different aspects to each one, so you just can't lump them in one category.
That's correct. We're not regulating the farming activity. It's the retail component of it that created the issue that caused us to get involved in the code enforcement aspect of it.
See, now my thought was more the fact that they've been doing it for 17 years. They lived there, and therefore, as far as I was concerned, it should have been grandfathered in, even though we don't use the term grandfather. So that was the statement that I was going by, not a new enterprise, not a new anything, something that was going for 17 years. And therefore, that was my standpoint, is why I was going that way. Not so much, well, let's look at what they're doing and decide whether it's that, because you're right. It's a tough issue to decide. A lot of nurseries do not grow their product from seed. They bring in plants that are already started, and then they grow them and sell them. So all of a sudden we say, well, that's retail and not ag. Or the person that maybe buys a few calves, didn't have them themselves, and feeds them out of their property and sells them. Well, is that ag? Yeah. But at the same time, they did not own the original cows. So I mean, my standard is, if they're going on 17 years, they can do it out of their backyard, they live there, let's leave them alone. That's kind of my thought.
Two comments to that, Mayor. We do have a procedure for something like that in the code. If you were, and basically what that requires is the property owner to come before you to prove that they were existing prior to the town incorporating, and that can be done that way. We've talked about that as a possibility, but unless I'm misunderstanding, I thought based upon the fifth, I heard some comments, and Councilman Jarrell or Councilman Walker could correct me, but I think they wanted to take it and go a little broader to ensure that anybody else who might be doing something like that in town didn't have that situation occur again if there was a code complaint. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the way I interpret it.
No, I think you're correct, but I agree with the mayor that we looked at this along that line and said, because we put in place the mechanism for people to come forward was a time-restricted mechanism. First of all, they had to know that such a thing existed and that they had a certain set of time to respond. That, I think, in our discussion, turns out to be not the best way to do things, but we didn't know at the time. So it was, in part, how do we approach it with the same intent, which all you have to do is come tell us, kind of a thing, and we'll log in, and then we'll check off the check mark. But at the same time, we talked about maybe we head off some other things that were really the same type of thing. So it almost two parts, but I think you're correct in your understanding. But I agree with the mayor in that, I think we commented on that we might have just done it the wrong way to make it, you have to come tell us, and you have only a certain amount of time to tell us, but if you don't know you have to come tell us, how do you not tell us? And that's kind of where I was coming from. So I don't know where the conversation, if we have an out.
That would be the right one. I mean, there are two different ones. There were the ones that they could demonstrate that they had been in existence legally, so to speak. You know, they had all the license and zoning, and it was from the county code. And that one doesn't have a time limit on it. But if they could not demonstrate, quote unquote, the legality of it for whatever reason, but it had been in existence, then that was the one that had the time constraint on it, so to have people come forward and they had to come and get the approval for use. So you had two different types of grandfathering. You had the typical grandfathering, which is always recognized, that if you show you were legal and valid and consistent at the time we enacted the code, you continue to do that. And for whatever reason you cannot, but you had been here and been doing this activity, and you could demonstrate that you were doing that prior to the corporation, that's when you had that window for people to come forward. So it was my understanding in this particular situation that they were not able to do the former, and the latter was not available to them because, of course, the issue of the timing. And the direction of the last meeting was to work on a code section that addressed the issue of the mom and pop operations. The small operations limited, and put some criteria on it so you did not allow a full-scale retail use in the middle of one of your letter roads, but at the same time, if it was associated with the residents and was family-owned and operated, was what we discussed at the last meeting, that was something that we could go through a code section on and address that issue. And it wouldn't matter whether they were there in 2006 or not. So that's where this direction's coming from, is to put together a code section that allowed, almost amended your home enterprise section, so to speak, for lack of a better term, mom and pops, family-owned and operated businesses. So that's the direction I took away, and this is the next step to confirm that what the town management feels they need to move forward.
And my thought was, you're right, but it was more for the uses that were never legal. You know, a guy that's chopping up cars to sell the parts, you know, that was never legal. Whether he had done it for 15 or 17 years out here, that was never legal. As far as selling hay out of your property, that's something that's been going on here for the 32 years I've been here. You know, it kind of moves around, but people have always kind of done that. So, I mean, in an ag res area, to me, I mean, you're not talking a store, you're not talking a big operation. You know, you're talking a barn or a trailer or whatever.
That was another part of your discussion, was that it was the mom that was consistent with the agricultural and rural nature, you know, targeted for the community type of business. You know, if it wasn't an illegal chop shop, but it was a junkyard that somebody's been doing for 15 years, is that the type? I think that was discussions you had when you adopted ULTCs. You did not want to have a blanket grandfather in.
That's right. That's exactly right.
But by doing that, you capture some of these businesses that are consistent with the nature of the town, and that's what we're trying to address with this code change.
If I may, what we talked about, and I think Mr. Mayor would be referenced, is that we had a fix for one case that we might tweak something. And what we ended up giving you more direction on was give us something a little broader, so that each case doesn't have to come forward and we might address each one, because we really would come out the same place on all of them, but take a lot more time doing it. Now, I think that's what I get out of what you just told me. And I think that's correct, and at least from my perspective, what we want you to do. I'm a little surprised that we're spending $7,000 to do that, but I don't know what it's going to take to do that. So it's hard for us for me to judge, but if that's what it's going to take, then that's what it's going to take. Because I think that's what we want to do. I mean, if there's 10 of them out there, one of them happens to come to our attention, the other 9 will come around over the next 5 years. Let's take care of that. I think it's what we'll get.
I think it's going to be surprising that we come to them and say, oh, by the way, it's going to cost you $10,000. You know, I mean, by the time we throw in the lawyers and everything else, that it's not included in the separate.
Well, that's not against them. That's part I indicated. This is a project we recommend, so it's not a cost coverage.
All right. Okay.
Well, one thing I'm concerned about, because right now, the way, as I read this, we're gonna allow hay sales and equestrian supplements, and basically someone to sell, items that are not necessarily ag, but ag-related. And, you know, where do we stop? You know, with maybe, you know, the next guy says, well, I should be allowed to sell something else that's.
And I don't even know, Councilman, if we're gonna make it that broad. I'm just saying, yeah, we just put it out there, it's what we're going to look at and see. I mean, it may end up being strictly hay.
But to me, where it stops is, was it ongoing before we were in town?
But then why even put this? Just allow a special exception or a permit for that one.
You know, we're looking at it because it appears, I mean, and I'm not criticizing the folks that did the EODC. I think they did a good job based on, you know, but it's obvious that there are some use issues that, you know, don't seem to comport with the way the EODC is set up, and what we think has uses that have been going on all along. So we do need to examine that and see what we have. And just try to address it.
I think one of the things, and rather than change the whole complaint every time we do something like that, I think the idea of a special exception, you know, to say, you know, you've been doing this long enough, okay, we're not going to blanket, we're not going to change our policy, but we will allow this, you know, because of special exception.
And I understand that, Mayor. I think the only approach that staff is trying to be careful about is with a special exception, and that would put the potential applicant in a cost recovery mode. Obviously, our preference would be if we could make it some form of conditional use. Maybe you have to have conditions, maybe you don't. But we're just trying to make sure it's not onerous in terms of them getting that approved.
Yeah, you had said you also didn't want us to burden the owner, the business person. And so if you create a process for special exception, then we have to go through a process.
Okay.
So I had taken that direction as write the code so that you could just apply the code to this as opposed to making that person come forward and affirmatively seek that, go through a process for something that had been going on.
Okay. All right.
Well, I'm still concerned because basically we're going to allow somebody to sell hay and other equine supplements anywhere within the town. Essentially a retail store anywhere around the town. The way I read it. But you know, we all agree that it really comes down to the scope. You know, if it's just somebody who has horses and happens to bought a trailer of hay and they want to sell it to their neighbors and friends, you know, that's acceptable. But then the scope of it, that's my concern. I don't want, you know, 100 British hay companies in here just because they know they can sell hay here. You know, I just want to make sure that we're safe.
There's two components to the proposal that we proposed tonight. The first is what is the product and how far do we go? And that may be constricted. I mean, you know, once we take a look at it and we study them, that's the first part. The second part, I gave you some examples of how we would try to regulate it, and as I said in the report, but not limited to, there may be more, you know, we'll have to see. It's going to depend on those two questions, and we do research, and it's going to take some field research. We need to check and see some things, but I think we'll be able to hit the mark. And if we overreach, you'll tell us. And if we don't, so I mean, I think that's the way we're going.
And like I said before, Mark, they have to be bona fide ag. You know, I didn't see that here, but the one thing, we had somebody was wanting to start up a business. They were going to lease out 5 or 10 acres and they were going to start trucking hay in. Well, they can't do that. I mean, they got to be a resident. They got to live on the property. They got to have a bona fide ag, cows, horses, whatever. And, you know, so that stops people from spotting all over like that's trying.
Yeah, I don't think this is going to create a bunch of, to use that example, British hay, because I think we understand pretty clearly where you were going with it. You know, whether you use the term mom and pop or whatever, but it's folks that are living on the property and making a living doing some of those activities, and they've been doing it for a long time. I mean, we're getting that. I mean, so I think, you know, we're not looking at expanding it so that all of a sudden we could pretty much do anything that's in an agricultural retail type situation, and we're, it'll be willy-nilly throughout the entire town.
It must be a good business if another one popped up on D Road.
Yeah, they're not living there.
Yeah, that has not been there for 17 years.
Is there, my view of a country community where a resident wants to come in and just, maybe the formality is, Mr. Town Manager, I'm going to come in and ask the council to approve my special exception. I'm going to outline it for them in whatever terms they decide to outline it, and we say yea or nay. Now that process to me is pretty simple in concept. I don't know if we can do it that way. We might have Mike lose the rest of his hair in that process, or me. But it sounds like kind of the thing that we would look at and say, we ought to be able to do that. But I guess it just won't kind of work in terms of allowing us to keep some
written to be objective and to not create, favoritism or whatever. That's why it's important to look at how you write it, because it's got to regulate fairly and give enough notice to folks of what they can or cannot do with their property.
All right, Thais. Then I've got Nina.
Go ahead, Nina. I want to hear your comment first.
And according to Road, I think you're starting to work it in the right direction, but I still see a little confusion. And I think the special exception issue and the cost of it is an issue that we need to pay attention to. Also on the ULDCs, remember that when the ULDCs were created, they were actually created later than they were put into effect. And there was actually quite a bit of time in between that. So again, there is issue there. If you look at it a little bit, like maybe the modified is an idea, as you said, maybe you don't want to pop them up everywhere. We've driven a few of them out already. And for me, it's always been a difference between, selling vitamins and bottles and such, or even grain, for me has been a difference, versus hay, or versus selling a plant. I mean, those of you who have grown up in rural communities know that when you've got some corn ready, lunch goes out and leaves on your trucks and gets sold wholesale. And then there are a couple that are just on the veggie stand for the local folks to, pick up. But, unfortunately, we live in Florida with horses, and it's not a good place for us to grow grass. But it is the fact that we have some of these places is helping some of us to sustain agriculture and to keep horses, to keep cows. And so permitting that kind of use, but keeping it so that we don't create a commercial inside that then gives an excuse for a real commercial right next to it, I think is important.
Okay. Todd? Okay, Marge?
A couple of things I want to touch on top of Glen and D Road. Doing retail sales basically anywhere, you got to think about some of the impacts it's going to have. I have a private driveway that leads back to 2 different residents. Now, if one of those residents back there start having retail sales, these people are driving across my driveway that I have to maintain for their retail business. There's a lot more that goes on that meets the eye. A second thing I wanted to touch on, there's a part of the code that says that if you feel you're grandfathered in, you can come to the town council. I was put in this exact situation, asked the town manager about doing that, and he said he can supersede or override the town council, and he's decided that I don't get that opportunity. I've had to spend $8,000 to try and appease code enforcement, and now they've decided that my shade house is closer than 50-foot setback. And it just goes on. And I know the town council a few months ago directed town staff not to enforce a setback on a certain shade house structure in the groves. And was that special for a special person, or was that a blanket for everybody? I kind of need clarification on that. Whether it was, until you clarify the ULDC with the shade structures, is that a blanket thing that we're not going to enforce that with everybody, or was that specific for a specific person?
It was actually, and I indicated this to Todd at the special magistrate hearing, it was actually based upon 2 specific cases that were raised by Councilman Goldsmith that he wanted us to look at and have a discussion on. And the time, I did not take that to mean that from a functional standpoint, it was all shade houses, or it was all tree mitigation, or whatever the case may be. It was specifically related to two specific cases. So that's been our interpretation of it, and I indicated that to Mr. Maloney.
And I've got to make a comment on that. The one thing I've always stressed, okay, first of all, with one shade house situation, the neighbors had no problem. And I've always said, when you do something and we make a special exception, the first priority is that your neighbors have no problem with it. And that's back to when that person leaves or sells his property, then it goes back the other way. You know, the new owner on the board, first of all, he's got to have permission from his neighbors. And I don't know if your neighbors approve or not, Tommy.
I agree with you 100%. In fact, the shade house structure that the side of the property's on, the neighbor has no problem with it. So actually, I was having to move the shade house structure closer to the neighbor with the complaint. Explain that to me. All right, and then he never addressed the second issue about you had a specific thing in there about coming to the town council if you felt you were grandfathered in. Is that supposed to happen? And if so, can you please direct town manager that is in fact supposed to happen?
All right, you know, I think that any resident has the right to come to us, you know, so we really can't stop that.
That is true, Your Honor. I don't have a question with that. The concern was at that point in time, it was within the jurisdiction of the special magistrate. And they were trying to go around the council while that was at the special magistrate level. And that's why I was trying to uphold the integrity of that process.
All right. Okay, Marge?
Marge Herzog, A Road. One of the concerns I have with all of these businesses, I mean, if you're limiting it to hay, okay, but when you start getting into some of the other stuff, I mean, that you had listed there, your grains and your other equestrian items, that sounds more commercial to me, you know? And what rules and regulations as far as the structures where they're housing these things, are they being held to? What standards? You know, Beck, I mean, he just spent $1,500 because county told him he had to do something because he's commercial, you know? Is Beck going to get an exemption for his area where he sells his hay and his grain if you're going to allow it to be sold anyplace else in the town? I mean, it's not fair for Beck to have to pay all of this money when you're giving carte blanche to other people to establish the same sales.
There were a lot of years that the Red Barn sold hay out of trailers. We all know that, so anyway, all right, Thais?
Yeah,
Thais Gonzalez,
this raised several questions for me. I mean, as far as I am understanding, these people have just been selling hay for 17 years, period. I mean, they don't have an ag classification? They don't?
They're bona fide ag, they had a license.
They are?
The county approved it, the county inspected it, and they had to correct a couple of problems to comply with the county before we ever became a town.
Okay, so this brings me exactly what I wanted to be. If they are, I want to know the joke. What happened? I'm missing something. According to the Palm Beach County property appraiser, if they do have the agriculture classification, they are commercial. You have to be commercial in order to have the agriculture classification. And if anybody is thinking about an exemption, that is not accurate, because the exemption doesn't exist. It's a classification. We still have to pay taxes on a lower, but. So this is where I've seen several conflicts between the ULCDs, you know, the code enforcement people, and everything that's happening here tonight. So if these people have the agricultural classification, that means that according to the property appraiser, they are commercial.
But there's got to be a way of limiting the commercial. That doesn't mean that everybody that's got an ag
Correct, but
can do anything they want.
It's agricultural commercial. So, I mean, I understand and I totally agree with the limits, because I believe that, then this is just an idea, the limits could probably be the basics. A horse doesn't need shampoo. A horse doesn't need supplements. They need feed. So, I mean, you know, you want to call it hay, you want to add the grain, you want to take away the grain, but the horse needs to eat. And in an agriculture area, we need to have the feed for the horses. Red Rhine is charging outrageous prices for hay. Outrageous. So, well, I mean, you know, we all know that. And this has been going on. You mentioned that you don't want 100 commercial hay. Hey, guess what? Hey, they're already there, you know. You're going to prevent a lot of under the table and more tax pay if you let them, you know. So.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? You want to restate the motion? What was that?
Move to authorize and to proceed pursuant to the work order.
Okay. All right. And who seconded it? Jim. It's so long. Okay. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right. One more?
Yes, sir. Final report of the new business tonight deals with the management staff recommendation regarding the roadway, equestrian trail, and greenway committee. There are a number of serious issues that the town attorney and I are working on, but just to take you back, you know, in March, we expended a large amount of time, a great amount of time, in terms of working on a grant for trails. And we had to provide a site control document which was provided by the district. The state, to make a long story short, came back and said that the document did not provide the sufficient site control. They needed a legal opinion from the attorneys to indicate that the document did provide the sufficient site control. I give kudos to Mike. He and his firm attempted to provide that legal opinion, however, they were not able to, and we had to withdraw the grant, and I provided that correspondence to you. There are a number of initiatives that the town attorney and I are going to work on, and we're going to be bringing back to you in the near future. But I did talk to the chair of the committee. My feeling is this. Right now, I think they have been very diligent in terms of trying to do a good job in dealing with horse trails and signage and all those things and grants as it relates to that aspect of the mission. My suggestion is this. We are going to need some time to work on these issues. And what I'm suggesting is that what I would like to recommend is that town council authorize or agree to put the committee on hiatus for this 6-month period. And when we get back, I think they're going to play a very important role in terms of giving you all advice as it relates to, at this point in time, it might be, at that point in time, it might be more roadway related than equestrian trails. But I did explain my position to the chair. I'm sure she was dying to jump in and give you, her perspective. But that is the request and the reason behind it.
Really? You think Nina wants to speak to this?
I do not.
Nina, would you like this?
Brian, chair of the Western Committee, Greenway Committee, Road Committee, Water, whatever you threw under us. No, I haven't been able to speak to my committee about that. The last time we met was last month, in the beginning of the month, because of the time schedule to have us meet towards the end of the month in order to accommodate management with a better schedule with all the meetings. We haven't spoken in a while. I feel that it is important to resolve some of these issues with the attorneys. I do feel that 6 months is a bit long. I also think that in order for us to get ready for the next grant, we don't want to be in the same boat that we were in last time. We were much too rushed. We didn't even get to see what was handed out. And we really should be more involved with something like that. And there needs to be a little pressure to resolve the issue that's at hand for various other reasons that have nothing to do with the horse trails. Furthermore, I have a lot of minutes that are outstanding that I can't approve by myself. And there are other issues in the meantime where we could, for example, where the community is asked to open certain areas up, where we've designed a gate that could be implemented instead of the gates that are currently forcing a horse to go right by a canal that would be much safer. Things like that, or how E-Road was opened up from Waxahachie Water Control in order to accommodate horses that didn't really require that much. So there are things that can be worked on. I do think that we need to take maybe a summer break. 6 months break is a bit long. You know, there's no reason for people, I mean, I just flew in from Traverse City. I got stuck in Detroit last night. I came in around noon to be here today, all right? And I paid premium to be back. There's no reason that we need to make other members go through that, you know. But I think 6 months, it's going to put us right back where we were last time, and that was not good.
All right. Is there any way to compromise it, or do you think we need 6 months?
Well, I know we need a couple months, definitely, for sure, to kind of formulate and discuss the things that we're talking about. I can see where maybe summer, 3 or 4 months, that might work. I mean, the minute issue is simply we're converting several sets of minutes to more action-oriented minutes. And I don't think there's a problem. We can defer those to that first meeting. If, say, we reconvene in October, does that sound good?
Yeah. And then as far as the gates, you know, I don't think the committee needs to work toward that. If we get a hold of Mark, we get a hold of the fleet, you know, maybe we can get that resolved just that way. I mean, you know.
Well, I just need to have the permission to come up to you and propose, for example, the gate. We've kind of informally approved it. But, you know, I don't want to be in a position where I'm doing things without my committee members having agreed with me.
The opening of the gate, though, is pretty straightforward anyway. Okay. All right. Will someone make a motion that we have a 4-month Davis?
I don't know if we need a motion, we just say, okay, hold off for 4 months.
Consensus, all right?
You'll just take a couple months off and reschedule September, October range.
Yeah, we're fine. All right.
I said a range.
I've got no public comment cards, but I know I saw one. Is there a public comment card?
No.
Okay, all right. And moving to the town attorney.
Mr. Mayor, this was one that was started. I think these are Councilman Dulcine's. We brought these before the council, and it's up to you whether you want to proceed or not. But he's not here tonight. Maybe
you want to move that to the contract.
These are the ones that relating to the tree.
What's the risk to delay it to the council back?
We haven't proceeded with the formal process yet.
Yeah, both cases are related.
So we're continuing to have communication with the folks to try to work on those issues too, but we're not, until that conversation is concluded, we've taken the direction to just not notice those to a hearing or anything.
Okay.
Everybody all right with that?
And then no much really health and safety issues.
Okay. All right, anything else, Mike?
No, sir.
Okay. Moving to town council members. Start with Jim.
I guess it's a traditional one, but I do mean it. I do thank everybody for coming. I just say it to say it. Not everybody's here. What?
Did we miss public comments? Was that what?
There are no public comment cards.
Oh, I thought you were referring to that particular item.
No, public comment cards.
Did you
There were no public comment cards.
Did you have a chance to talk tonight?
She flew back. She's got a stable hands.
Anyway, thank everybody for coming, and I think we made a lot of progress tonight. It's not yet midnight, we're still doing well.
That was Brian.
Good night.
Ron?
Thank you all for coming and enduring. I'm glad you held out.
And I think we got a lot done tonight, so anyway. Nina, come on up. Keep it quick, keep it short.
Oh, it's very short.
Don't have
It's
this.
very short.
Okay.
Did you go there? I pulled that. You according to E-Road.
You mean your special exception? Don't pass anything out. No.
Tomorrow, a lot of the communities are meeting at 7:50, which is, Treasure Coast.
Move to accept and file
So you just,
from Nina, 750.
yeah, I just want to make sure you have it.
Versus this is not been moved to accept and file. Present this to us to accept.
No, we gotta get out of here.
I just want you to know that it's going on tomorrow, and so we are local college town, that sound of it, you might want to be there.
Thank you very much. Motion to adjourn.
We'll call you Mark. Hi, how are you?